Hey everyone, this is the after action report for Abyssinia for the Imperial Unity game A2C, the Chrysanthemum game. I played Abyssinia and just wanted to walk through the game, my thoughts on it from my perspective, hoping to do a group commentary with a few of the other players later this week, but just wanted to do this for anyone playing Abyssinia in the future, and then also just to my own memory and thought on how the game went. So just kick it off. I'm not going to go super into tactics and analyze every single unit and where they could have gone, but just talk through what I was thinking each year and commentate on how it turned out. So I did scrap gang for this. I didn't really pick any power. I think there were like 10 powers left when it came around to scrap, and I don't even remember what the other ones are, but I know why I picked Abyssinia. I was going on vacation for a couple weeks early in the game and did not want to start out as a big region colonial, having to talk to everyone. And I had seen the Captain Meme of the A1 where he had played Central Africa and saw this Africa setup and thought, great, I've only played 2 normal diplomacy games before, so I learned a lot going through this game. It's a beginner game, and I think a power that's fairly easy on beginners to start with. So the very beginning of the game, I just looking at Africa, I wanted to, of course, talk to my neighbors of the other 3 regional powers: Adrian, Congo, and Mali, the Ottomans. And beyond that, I wasn't too concerned. I figured later on I could interact, but these powers specifically, I was big on, even before talking to anyone, doing like Africa regional chat. And we set up an African regional chat to deal with all the pesky colonial powers, because I was really worried about the colonials as far as, even if you did well against them, they could still take builds from other areas and dump it in to their colonies, and I didn't like that. I figured I wanted to, if I was doing well against someone, I didn't want them to be able to reinforce from other areas of the board. So I said, hey, let's kick out the colonials before we go on with the game, because I just wanted less people to deal with, honestly, and less powers to contend with. And even though I just didn't want to have to negotiate with someone that had other stuff going on with, like the Dutch and English have stuff going on in America, or even Portugal and Spain, and they would have other considerations, and I just wanted to be very focused on my area. So there's danger in that. I wouldn't recommend it every time to kind of have a preset idea of who you want to ally with at the start, because as you start talking to people, some are much better at communication than others. And if the African regionals were terrible and, say, England or the Dutch were great, it would have messed with my plans. So I'd say have an idea, but definitely be open to allying with people you may not consider on the board work as well, just because they may be better diplomatically and easier to get along with, and then you can make the board work the way you want. So right off the bat, I realized, oh my gosh, I have a 10 power Ottoman, or 10 unit Ottoman, who can come down very quickly into my centers, and then I have Adrian that can come up into my centers very quickly. And so starting out, we had the regional chat, and everyone seemed, roughly on board with that, with no units moving. But Adrian and I DMZ Sadamo and Gala right away. There's plenty of neutral dots around. Let's not move into these 2. Let's go get the free dots for now and work things out later. With the Ottomans, I remember the big negotiation was on not going into Red Sea. So I wanted to move Mekele out to Gulf of Teodoro to get either of these dots over here. And if I did that and they moved into Red Sea, all of a sudden I have a center under attack. So I told them, you can have Sana as long as you move your fleet from Mecca through Tamaha and they were totally fine with that. I don't remember we discussed the army in Cairo, but it turned out to not be an issue. But this was about 3 months ago, so memory may be a little rusty on the exact negotiations. So if we look at the spring moves, I say out of Suakin as well, so I'm not touching Cairo. And everyone is going for the free dots. So I plan to get Hawara, Darfur, Azadi, I believe, and the fourth one's going to be Aden. So I can double up as a 4-center power. That's the smallest amount of units on the board. Other powers start with a lot more units. And I'm assuming if you're watching this, you understand the rules of Imperial Unity. If you haven't, there's far better YouTube videos on the game and the rule set to look at. So I'm looking to double up here, and we do keep that DMZ. And Congo talks to me about, are you going to let Mali have Canham, which I can't really prevent this phase in the fall either. I'm not close enough, and I say, yeah, I definitely want Mali to have Canham. I have no Canham. I have no problem with them coming across the Sahara Desert. They start with the most colonials around them. They have 4 colonial powers plus fleets out in the ocean, plus this unit here, which is roughly in their area. So I wanted Mali. They also have not as many guaranteed builds. They have Timbuktu, and yes, they can get the coastal province here, but you can see it's already contested, while as we have a much more free reign over Central Africa to a degree. So I was fine with Mali getting an extra center this phase, because I know they needed the units to help fight off the colonials. Ottomans keep to their promise. They move down through Tamaha, and Cairo actually moves over there. Tripoli moves away, so I remember everything being fine with this in the spring. No retreats, and then in the fall, it all works out. Aden, the 3 I talked about earlier. I coordinate with Adrian to have Mara, and he doubles up as well, gets 4 dots. I believe Congo, we had some discussion right after the game ended, but I'm hoping to have them on the joint discussion. They are working with the Netherlands here to coordinate that they both get dots, which is fair. I mean, there's free dots right now. Everyone should be getting them. And so I'm seeing some Dutch-English coordination over here. They do a bounce so that Mali can't get into the English center. And I'm not getting much conversation so far. I've reached out to the colonials, and they're not communicating as much as the regional powers are. And I know at this point, I believe there was a anti-colonial league channel set up with all the regional powers. I don't get invited to it until like a year or 2 later, when I started communicating with Safavid. But there's already kind of a anti-colonial idea going on, and you're seeing some communication, not entirely, but some communication or alliances that work that way. So we color everything in, no retreats, and then we have builds. And my builds are pretty easy here. I want fleets. There's a theme in this game of just not having enough places to build fleets. And especially if I'm going to maintain some kind of alliance with the Africa regional powers, I don't need armies in here at all. I need to have armies go north, fleets get out into the oceans, and try to work against the Ottomans. I mean, the Ottomans have been fine so far as communication. They've stuck to their word, but I was still of the idea of like, okay, I'm going to work with the regional powers here. They have their own things going on, so I need to go against the Ottomans. And then also my second thought is I'm going to move into the desert to help Mali with what is a growing colonial presence along the coast, and hopefully get something out of it, or at least solidify an alliance. So that's the idea so far. So I think my builds are here. Oh, we have the leaderboard, so we can see that most of the, I think almost everyone that started with a 4 got up to 8. So me, Adrian, Congo, Molly only got +3, and Poland down at the bottom. So you can already see kind of the builds, and I think doubling up from 4 is really important, just because, especially with a 10 unit Ottoman became a 17 unit Ottoman. You know, that's the growth there is pretty large, and so I want to grow as well, and doubling up to 8 helps. 3 armies, 1 fleet. I'm not going to wave a build in the first year. I need units to do things, and I build everywhere I can. I've never played. I didn't play A1, and so I learn as we go about how coring works. I learn as we go that Cairo is a canal, meaning fleets can move from Red Sea to Cairo into the Med. Me just being a history fan, didn't think that was possible because there's no Panama Canal in this game. There's a North Coast, South Coast, and fleets can't move through this area. And I'm thinking, well, the Suez Canal was like in the, I don't know, 1800s or something. This game starts in 1643. Surely you can't do that as well. And read the rules and was like, oh, okay. So all these fleets can come down this way. This is an open path, and that matters pretty big in the game. Happy to see that Adrian put down 3 fleets, 1 army, basically as many fleets as they could. That was very pro working with them. So we're keeping this DMZ, and they're not slapping down a ton of armies to move north. So feel pretty good about that. Moving on to the spring. Just looking at my notes here. So I'm moving the armies over here to help Mali. The desert is really interesting. You have 3 units up here, and then all 3 of these spaces can support, attack, tap, whatever, every province around it. So there's a lot of desert power, and I realized that I hadn't dealt with these multi-unit provinces before. And so I say, hey, keep Cannon for a while. I want it eventually, but we need to deal with this. And so I move over to help out, repel some of this, and get some of England, Netherlands back. And I've had very little communication with them. And Molly's been great as far as sharing ideas, sharing moves, and Congo's on board as well. So the 3 of us are trying to coordinate to kind of move or take these centers from the colonials. During this phase, I had communications with Congo and Adrian I really wanted to, hey, we've met. We're all in the middle here. There's no further gains if we're going to work together. Let's all move away. I wanted to DMZ this whole triangle here. And they try. I think these are honest attempts for the most part to try to get away. Of course, I'm the only one that succeeds, which makes me feel, oh gosh, now I'm worried they're actually sticking to it. But the idea was we don't need armies in the center. This is safe. We need to fight in the south. We need to fight on the coast, and I need to move units towards those objectives. So, me and Adrian did arrange this move set here just so that it would at least appear at the moment that I was fighting him and really wanted Mara and wanted to move out east. If I'm the Ottomans, and I think if I remember at the time, they didn't really, I don't think they were too convinced by this, especially a move into Suakin. I mean, I'm moving up to Cairo. I now have 2 units on Cairo. So I don't think this did too much as far as sell that, but he didn't have anything else he wanted to do with the unit, and so just trying to make it look like at least there's some arguments there. Or we do have some retreats. We can see the Savids and Ottomans are working to push out Portugal. That's the few other videos I've seen on finished games. That seems pretty standard. It's easy to do. It's an easy expansion for Safavid to push this out, and so not surprised to see that. Looking back at Mali is able to push in, but this is just tactics here, trying to gain an advantage. But the overall strategy is what I've discussed. This is fall 1643, so fall year 2. Yeah, the Ottomans are not fooled, I don't think. They protect against the possibility of me moving up, and I do move up, but I realize that the Ottomans were a very good tactician. I felt like, especially as relatively new to diplomacy. I mean, I've watched videos and I've played a few games, but trying to most of the time I'm using Backstabber to understand how certain things work, and I definitely was early on this game just trying to understand how cuts worked and supports worked, and I realized if I go 2 against 2, there's a strong chance we don't make any momentum and that this would happen. So instead of trying to go for the attack, I'm moving into position, move up to Red Sea, move to Beha. For some reason, move out of Zagwa, but I think this was coordinated with Mali that they needed more support to get rid of these Dutch units here. And working with Mahara as well. I think this was just to get more units in the area. We were working together, and more fleets around this would definitely help. The other idea with this is that eventually, once we can get Mali a few more dots, that relatively soon I'd be taking Canham. Just, I'm not even sure why. I think I insisted on that as part of the payment for my help. So moving them into Sahara, I was like, I will help you take these dots, but this seems like a pretty nice line to divide our areas, and I want to own this side of the Sahara, you own the other side, and maybe we DMZ the Sahara or work together north. But I think this was the payment I asked for to devote some units to helping out this cause. So I don't think I had any builds this phase, positioning, but yes, none of us are getting any builds. Not a huge problem. I don't see there was a maybe 1 or 2, but with all the free dots, I say all the free dots, and you're going to see Warsongali is going to stay neutral for quite a while, and it was a bit frustrating. It was just kind of neither me or Adrian wanted to get ahead of the other person, and so we're kind of keeping this dot until someone got their 9th dot, and then we could give the other person this dot. So we're working together where we can, but it stays neutral way longer than it needs to. And honestly, we should have just had someone take it and have a unit, but we did not. So no builds, but of course with this movement, and I'm sure some broken agreements on what exactly things we're doing, Ottomans build Fleet Mecca, which really throws a wrench in things because we do have 1 fleet on 1 additional fleet, but it makes the stalemate. So now we have 3 on Cairo versus, okay, I've got 3, and we've got 2 on Sana'a, and they have Riyadh, so they have 2. So it's as you'll see, it's a very good stalemate area. I think the Red Sea Cairo is a very good defense line, and I am on vacation at this point and just trying to stay committed to what I've done so far and helping out here, and then trying to push against the Ottomans. And they're very good tactically, so not a lot of progress is made as we move into the 3rd year. So instead of trying to get fancy with moves here and trying to make room, or trying to take to get across the Red Sea. So I'm like, well, I can see they can hold this 3 for ever. or it would be very difficult to break. And I saw the idea where there's two fleets, and it was just a lot of guesswork. I mean, you can sit here and look through the tactics yourself and think about what you would do. But I finally came on this move set where I'm like, well, if I can just get an army across, I can have a lot more tapping and disruption. And so I sat there and sat there, and this was the one time on vacation I didn't play from the phone. I actually broke out the laptop and really sat through trying to figure out what moveset I was going to be comfortable with. And a day and a half, even before the moves adjudicated, I asked Adrian to support Red Sea, because I saw that most likely these two fleets are going to attack Red Sea. I want to do this convoy. It's going to cause a lot of issues on this side of, or in Saudi Arabia, and asked for a support. And their communication had kind of dropped off a bit, and I didn't get a response and didn't get a response. And at the end of the day, they decided no, they didn't decide. They just didn't see it. And so they had put this move in, I guess, early on, and it kept that way. And the poor communication has kind of built up over the past couple of years. And this was a huge moment, or a huge move for me, because it means I can't rely on them to answer comms and discuss things in a reasonable time period for this game. And like, I get it, we all have life, we're busy. I believe they were in school and dealing with some school stuff, and that's fine, but like, we have 48 hours for moves. I don't expect same hour communication, but if I'm asking for a move and you're willing to do it and you don't respond for more than a day, it's like, this game does require some time commitment. I mean, I'm on vacation, my honeymoon actually, and like, I'm still taking a few moments here and there to make sure that I'm helping out how I can and communicating with the different powers. So to like really spend some time and make a move set that I was really happy with and that would have worked if I got the support, and then it not get supported, was, I mean, I told him, I was like, that's fine. Hey, we have life going on, but I was fuming, and I'm talking to Congo and Mali and complaining. I'm like, this is starting to become a problem. I think later on, maybe in the fall phase, Congo had a similar issue, or maybe it was in the spring, where we were asking, hey, have you heard from Adrian? I haven't heard from him. Or is this what he's going to do? And it was just creating a lot of problems in maintaining an alliance. If I'm in alliance with someone, I need them to at least do minimum communication. So at this point, it's going to set me back a little bit as far as getting sinners, and it definitely soured the relationship and that I had with Adrian. Spain's convoying over, which is nice. At this point, since I'm fighting the Ottomans, I'm happy that Spain is also fighting the Ottomans. It means these fleets aren't going to come down here and provide more support. I need the help. More people fighting Ottomans are great. Safavid at this point has been coordinating on the east side with the Ottomans, and so I don't expect any pressure coming from this side, but I'm checking the other borders, and I don't think I've communicated too much with Spain or anything going on here, but realizing, okay, at least someone else is distracting Spain, and then I'm moving up to be able to tap and do other things. My other point that I have on this phase is I think Mali's asked again. I mean, at this point, we've taken everything south of the Sahara Desert. I wouldn't say everything up here, but we're in good position to completely push this back. And I start to ask for I'm like, can I have it this year? And I would love to have a build. I didn't like not having builds. And they asked for holding off for one more year, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. But at this point, I have to do, I think, my first retreat of the game. and there's not too many of them, but this one was due to a missed move by an supposed ally, and I think it was just really missed. But it really hurt getting over to the other side, and you'll see I'm gonna bounce my head against this wall for a while until Salvador comes in. So it works out in the long run as far as someone who's more communicative comes in and we're able to deal with it, but it really hurt in the short term. So I retreat back to my capital. Oh, sorry, not my capital. I always considered it my capital because it was the most important center to me, but Gondar is the capital. And then in the fall of this year, I go from a very, I don't know, unlucky, but very bad break to an extremely good break. And this helps a ton. The fall of the year, the Ottomans NMR with 17 units, and surprisingly doesn't lose too much. Besides Gadamedes, and then of course I'm attacking. So I do get Adjuran on side this time. They are responding, and so we put 3 against 2, and then we put 3 against what would have been 3, but 3 against 2 here as well. So either way they wanted to defend. Well, I guess it wouldn't have mattered as much, but I think at this point, I forget what they're doing down here, but they're in this war with France and Portugal. The idea is that I do get everything along the Red Sea. I don't think they're looking to contend that. So the idea is they're helping me get a center, and then they can walk into Warsongli, which I'd be fine with if that worked out. Let's see. I think I do try at this point to start to. I'm still trying to talk to Ottomans. I don't like not talking to powers that just because we're fighting. I mean, the best way to stop fighting or do something else is to talk about it and work out some arrangement or peace deal. And for some players, that's not an option. It's just like, well, we're at war. We're going to be at war until I decide we're not at war. Like, well, let's just keep talking about it. And so here, I see that Spain's making advances and has taken Tunis, has taken Gadamedes, and is pushing the Ottomans back on the land, and doesn't have a fleet advantage, but I was trying to convince them that, hey, I will stop attacking you if you cede Saudi Arabia. You know, just disband what's down here, because you do have a couple of disbands, and then you can focus into the Med, and they're not having it. So, and that's why I didn't support Gadamedes here, because I did this unit. You're kind of saying, what am I doing tapping Aswanki? It's like I'm trying to help Mali a little bit, but what I really wanted this unit to do was support Gadamedes and make some kind of peace deal with the Ottomans. Not really sure why. It wasn't like I have anywhere else to go, but just chalk it up to inexperience. But this is the first time I start to work with the Safavid, and we've had like some friendly comms, some communication, but I'm trying to convince them to stab the Ottomans because they can, and I really would like some more pressure on this side, and I don't see why they wouldn't. They had worked together a little bit, but it didn't seem like they were super great allies. And first part of trust is they do. I'm a bit rude. I'm like, hey, just take this free center. I mean, they've left it open for you almost. And they do tell me they're going to stab the Ottomans, so they were nominally allies. And she tells me before she makes the move, and I don't reveal it because that's great for me. I'm trying to move in as well, and they had been working together against the Russians, and of course against Portugal down here. But now that that's taken care of, I think this was where she wanted to expand next. So, the other thing is I still don't understand, or I haven't really understood the importance of coring in this game, and you'll see that like next turn, I think I just support, or I think I just hold when I could be coring. So I fail to like realize, hey, this is someone coring directly against my centers in the middle of Africa when we're trying to fight outwards, and I'm just oblivious to that right now. I just don't I don't realize, hey, this is, once you core and potentially stab, you can then build behind the stab, and so I move back. I don't even think I'm moving back in response to that. I think I'm moving back potentially to take Canham, because I still want it, and I'm getting tired of, now that Molly really has grown out, um, wanting that center, and it should happen next year. So trying to convince the Ottomans to look, you're not going to keep Arabia. Just get rid of it there, and you can go over and fight there. And they retreat back and out and down. And I'm like, okay, just get rid of these 3 units. I think they are down 3, down 5. Oh gosh. So I'm like, just retreat, start over. Trying to convince them. I get a couple builds out of this, and when the winter comes, it is not that. They give up the med. So instead of, I guess, believing me, or there is a player change out at some point in this. I'm not quite sure. It's around this time, so I don't know if this was the new Ottomans or the old Ottomans, but I don't think this was particularly smart to do, to give up this area while you keep, units down here, especially when you don't control Cairo, especially when you can't control Cairo at 4 units on it. So you're isolating these 2 fleets. You've got a lone army that will probably get taken down here soon. I can understand getting rid of these armies, but getting rid of these fleets just did not make a lot of sense to me, especially because it seemed, I don't recall the exact, but like this area up here. Okay, well, there was some attacking, so this is an NMR, but I don't know. It's whatever they wanted to do. It just was frustrating for my plans, so maybe that's why I'm trying to justify that it was a bad move on their part. But I was very disappointed to see they kept a lot of Arabia. At this point, I opened relations with the Spanish, to, now that they've completely gone, I'm trying to get them to divide up North Africa with me. And this was a fun discussion. Spain was a great player as far as negotiations, and just easy to get along with, very, very responsive. And so the argument I made is, hey, we can DMZ Fezzan and Jalo, and I want Gadames, and you can have Tripoli, and then we don't have to fight. I don't want to fight past that. You can continue on to the Ottomans and Europe. You can do whatever you want. And they weren't quite on board with that. It took a while. There was math discussions on percentage VSCC and what was fair and what wasn't. But the argument I made is, I said, look, I want to be the land power, and I want you to be the ocean power. And this is an inland province, and you promise not to put more armies onto Africa, and I promise not to try to take a coastal center with armies because you have a bunch of fleets up here. I'm controlling Cairo, and I can make a separate argument for Cairo, but I'm like, you can have Tripoli and Tunis and all that, and I won't contest it. But I want Gadames. I want units adjacent to the Sahara Desert, and I think that's fair. I think it's a fair land oceans split, and we don't have to fight. I don't really want to, and then I'll only keep 1 unit here, so I'm not going to be able to push on either of these. We're DMZing these 2, and if you just keep fleets here, or self-bounce or do whatever, then we shouldn't have any problem. And we eventually get there. It was kind of a Napoleon England split, like just trying to get that arrangement. I think they had other priorities, and at the end of the day, they said, yeah, that was fine. I do build more fleets. I'm always trying to build fleets in this game. And I don't know, an army down here as well. So doing good work. I think we've moved forward. We're down to 2 colonial centers here, and then the idea is that we turn around on Portugal. This is a mess down here, but they're making some kind of push. I haven't really paid much attention to what they're doing out here, but I can't really criticize and say they're not making that enough progress when I've made a whole 1-2 province gains in the last few phases. Congo is starting to say, hey, this is hard to push through. There's there's an area here where there's only 2 and it's hard to just get down into this area. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, it's the game. Just keep pushing. And same here, I'm just trying to keep pushing. I'm focused on Mecca and then working out things with Spain, and really not thinking much past that, which I should be. But so then we see, moving on to the spring of 45, Spain does keep to the arrangement. He moves out, I move in with support, because trust only goes so far early on, and you see a lot of stalemates going on here in the Ottomans. This is when I really start communicating with Safavid, is to try to get some pressure, because I'm going to need help. I can't, a lot of tactical minutia here, but I can't really make too much progress this way. They've got, you can look at it yourself, but it's pretty hard to advance any further. And the other thing is, we see again, Congo knows what's going on and is coring Mandara, and I just hold in Darfur. Like, if you're gonna hold with someone coring directly next to you, it would probably make sense to maybe core yourself. And I just am unaware of that game mechanic, or I know it exists, but I don't, in my mind when I'm putting in moves right now, I don't think, okay, I should be coring to potentially set myself up, because I'm really starting to, especially if you do get some explosive growth. Right now I'm just restricted to 1 fleet build, 3 army builds way back here, and it would help to be coring and just not focused on that in the slightest. So starting to really stalemate here, and I guess at this point I'm really not sure. I am back from vacation, so I'm thinking about the game a lot more, and going into next turn, see what I do. They do get pushed out of Riyadh, and that's another reason I'm talking with Safavid more, is like, okay, now that I have another country that's here, I would like to work with you. I would like to figure out some way of taking Ottoman centers, because they've decided they wanted to stay down here, which I think was a mistake, and I need a little bit of help, but I think we can finally make some advancements on this front. And Spain's in Tripoli, everything's arranged, great. And then we move on to fall, and I will explain all these lines here in a bit. Huge shout out to our GM. I didn't realize till looking at the other games, is the bot broke. There's a Discord bot that does moves. If you're familiar with Imperial Diplomacy, it's in much better shape now. But the bot broke pretty early in our game, I think across all games. And our GM just decided they were going to hand draw these maps. And I didn't realize at the time how amazing they did of a job hand drawing these maps, coloring red moves that did not work. Like the mecha move here does not go through because it's 3 against 2, and I do move through. And it was huge for as far as readability, and something I've been pushing and donating for the new for the bot team that's working on it, is to get this included in how the bot draws maps, is red arrows for things that don't work, because it makes the readability way better, especially on a map this big. It really helps with understanding what things are happening. So our GM was hand drawing it, and did so for about 10 years of the game, and then finally I think burned out or just got busy and couldn't keep up. And we had the bot come in for the last few years, and we all 25. I mean, we all appreciated that so much. So shout out to Foggy Moose for being an amazing GM, especially for my first Imperial game. Was a huge help in just readability. All these moves are because there are some worldwide channels, of course, just more than the public square. I don't know who had set it up, but there was a world friendship forum, and it was the idea was that we as a every power in the world could propose proposals, and we could vote on it. And some of it was silly, some of it was I'd say most of it was kind of silly, just things that we're all trying to be friendly. Oh, there's some skirmishes going on, and it's diplomacy, but trying to put it in kind of a role-playing perspective, and that was really enjoyable. And the host had moved around different countries, and a few different people had taken turns kind of hosting and calling a roll call and doing some other things, kind of like a UN. And it was all fun and games, but I think it was funny this year is that the host determined that you could only vote if you sent a unit to Moscow this year. And you're voting on stuff that has no binding effect. It has no it's just part of the game. But the amount of people that actually did send a unit to Moscow was truly, truly amazing. We're fairly early in this game, and most units have moves they need to do or something productive as far as the actual objective of the game. And yet, even me, you see, I was like, well, sure, I could take this center, but right now I've agreed to not with Adrian since they fell behind and they're not in a position to take it. Also coring in Arabia, by the way. Got to pay attention to that. And so, okay, I want to sit here and I want to take it when I can, possibly, and I'll send it. So I think we had maybe, I could count them all, but it was 15 plus countries that had sent a unit, which was really awesome. Just as a show of just fun things that happen in game. You see games where there's super long convoys or power ends up somewhere they're not supposed to, and this is just part of diplomacy, and kind of the community was doing something fun and interesting. And I think it even shows more that Foggy, the GM, had to draw all these lines. Oh my gosh. And drew them well where they were on them. I mean, the bot, I don't know what the bot would have done with this. I would love to see it, but drew them all so they snaked through and you could still read all the valid moves. And anyway, that's my admiration for the GM and huge appreciation. It was really amazing. So what are we? Fall 1645. This is a big move in this game for what comes next. So I've been wanting Canham for a while, and Molly still, I believe this turn, insisted I should not take it. I should not take it. And at this point, I'm like, what? You're almost done. I think you're, forget the center count, if this is even accurate. Molly's at 9. Okay, so are they at 9? It looks rough, yeah. But at this point, they have shifted. They're confident that they're going to finish this off, and they've shifted to starting attacking Portugal and moving up that way. And I'm still trying to help in this area and got Ganymedes, but I'm like, at this point, I want the center that we talked about. I devoted 1 or 2 units over here doing somewhat helpful things. We agreed on it several years ago. It's the fall. I want to move here. And they still didn't want me to do it. And Congo, the idea was that Congo and I should bounce here. And that's what they wanted. And Congo had been asking my opinion on Molly and on Adrian, and I was complaining nonstop about the missed support last year and how much it set back. And I could have had an army over here. I could be doing a lot. I mean, I could have been taking over a lot more of Saudi Arabia, and said Safavid has come in at this point, and I've shifted focus more north, and so we agree, and I don't think too much of it, but we agree that we're gonna say we're bouncing, and I'm gonna take it, and okay, well, oops, that's whatever. But so I'm like, well, that's great. I get the center, and then the idea, I think the way they sold me, Congo sold me on not bouncing and like, hey, I'm going to go to Hossa States instead, was because this Portugal unit could have got popped and they didn't want, or it could have got dislodged is the term, and would have been down here, and so they didn't want that against their centers, and so they said, hey, let's all move this way, so that I'm realizing now that unit could have gone to Pheasant if if it got dislodged, but it probably wouldn't have been the greatest idea, and it moved down here instead, so it didn't even get dislodged. But they made a good argument why, like, we shouldn't bounce. You take it. Let's move in. And I'm like, okay, well, I've wanted the center. I've been kind of miffed that Molly's still insisting that I don't take the center, so good with me. And there was not a lot of trust with the coring, which I'm starting to realize, and the idea of like, is Congo just telling me that they're moving here when they asked me to move into Khanum and then get into Darfur or something, just sorry. Just a bunch of thoughts go through your mind, but at the end of the day, I was like, okay, great. And we see here we have maintained the African Regional Council up until this turn, and Congo does what I think is probably the most ballsy move of the game. Definitely one of the most impactful moves is Congo decides to stab both Mali and Adrian on the same turn. This was not arranged taking Burundi. This was not arranged taking Great Ardor or whatever. And the moves north were not arranged as well. And I go into the Africa regional chat after this, and I'm the last message in there, I think, is something like, guys, was that all arranged? Knowing full well that was probably not arranged. And I was like, Congo, do you care to explain yourself? And that's where that channel ended. RIP African Regional Council. It was pretty good while it lasted. I mean, the main goals are mostly accomplished at this point. As far as getting the regionals out of this area, still some work to be done down here. But I mean, it could have lasted another year or two and got rid of everything on the continent and all four of us together. But Congo goes to me and our private chat and says, well, if you want, I will explain. And talks about how their argument was pretty good. They say, hey, look, I just didn't see expansion after we take this. I see Mali as being a pretty strong power with a lot of expansions up here and ability to build fleets and yada, yada, yada. And really what we were asking for Congo to do was to build fleets and go to South America. Because he's right. There's not, after we take care of Africa, where is he going to go? And he just felt kind of boxed in, is the way he explained it, and decided that this four-way alliance wasn't going to allow all four of us to grow at the pace that we wanted to. I don't know if there's a leaderboard here, but we're doing okay. We're middle of the pack, higher. We're doing fine, but you can see that some of these powers can have some pretty explosive growth, and if the four of us are sticking together, they just didn't see that growth happening. And laid out a pretty good argument, and I listened and I said, okay, that makes sense. Of course, Adrian has kind of just not communicated at all, barely mentioned the stab, or was like, yeah, that wasn't, I think they sent like one message, like, no, not arranged or something. and Mali was also kind of relatively quiet. This is a while ago, so I mean, everyone can look at the channels now and can see the actual communication, but it wasn't a huge. So my very first thought was like, okay, well, this was the idea: is that if with 4 powers, if one stabs someone else, the other 3 can gang up and kill him. And so that would be the idea: is that Congo has broken the alliance. We all go against Congo, and now we're a 3-party alliance. But really can't. Audrin is like has. I look at their position and I'm like, okay, you have 3 armies, a bunch of fleets doing a bunch of nothing. Portugal's here. What? I mean, like, I really hadn't been paying that much attention. All I cared about for their units was this fleet and how it was helping me. I wasn't looking to the south. Now Mali can do a lot more. Mali can peace out and really do a good war here. I think doesn't have the ocean power at this point, but can do stuff. I mean, I feel like this is a pretty well balanced battle. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, first of all, I need to take care of whatever I can here and move these armies back. I need to get back and deal with things in Africa. And that's what I posed to south of it is. I forget what we're gonna do, but and also now I'm like, oh my gosh, I really should have accord Darfur. What am I doing? So let's just move forward. But this was a mistake by Spain. They mentioned, I forgot that it wasn't Spanish already and moved out. So yay, another Ottoman unit stays on the board, which I hate and was very frustrating. Portugal has to get rid of those fleets. Forgot about that. I was like, how did Portugal end up there? But I guess they were getting attacked elsewhere. I do in that move, and this is the reason Congo had got me to do this, was they wanted Mali with less units. And so while they were supposed to bounce, no, they were trying to get Mali units off the board because they knew they were stabbing, and great play. I mean, honestly, perfect. Really puts me in a better position, puts them in a better position against them, and it got the dot that I was owed, or I say owed, the dot we agreed to several years ago that kept getting delayed. So I'm not anti-Mali at this point, but I'm glad to have that dot. Leaderboard, still no one even above 50, so I guess builds, I've got 2, and it's going to be boring. It's going to be the same. I need more fleets. Always want more fleets. Always looking to build fleets. And they take 1 off, which is great, but that made the math easier. But I really still am. I'm not trying to conquer all of Africa. And I always felt like I had enough armies in Africa for the most part, where with the alliances I had, I didn't feel out of sorts. Now, do the Congo builds concern me? Yes. But they've stabbed the other 2, and they're really trying to get me on side, and that's basically the furthest north they could build anyways. So I'm not terribly concerned they're going for Darfur. So lots of conversation with Congo on what they stab, but the regional council is done. And the Ottomans are getting eat, which is nice. South of it is moving through them. And honestly, at this point, I'm still mad at that missed support from earlier on, because I wanted to be armies on the continent, and now that dream is basically done. I mean, the south of it has moved, and we get special units, by the way. We have social icons here. So these are fleets, the boats, and you see little emblems and stuff, which is really neat. I never did it because I appreciate simplicity, but if you see those are just different fleets. But at this point, south of it has really moved in on the Ottomans, and any major expansion I have this way while being friends with them is over. And also, even if I wasn't friends with them, that's a lot of I don't have, what's the center count over here? I don't have that. They're at 16 and I'm at 10, 12. But so I know this has been pretty hard to break through. I know they're going to move up, and we've been friendly so far. So honestly, I'm just worried they're going to keep continuing through me. So I'm not really trying to move in on them. So as we go into the spring of next year, I am, and sorry for not, I mean, this is my after action report. There's a lot of stuff going on around the world. I mean, Mapuche got completely kicked out. There's some discussion on in the anti-colonial league, which I learned at the end of the game was leaked to the colonials anyways, but I wasn't paying too much attention to it. IMR had worked with the colonials and pushed them out, and like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on, but this has been my focus. I'm zoomed in here because I'm a regional power, I'm an experienced player, and this is what I'm focusing on. So going into the spring, I am still undecided. You could say playing both sides, but I don't know. There's a lot of decisions on. Even early on. I'm not a big Adrian fan. Like I want to take these dots. They haven't been the best ally. It's a good expansion point. So I do builds to sort of set up to take these dots. They're way out of position, way down the coast, and figured with the stab, it's as good as opportunity as any. Versus having all three of us try to go up on Congo, I don't think that would work. So okay, so if I'm going after Adran, do I side with Mali against Congo? And how does that work with me attacking here? Or I side with Congo, who is the stabber, and work on Mali. And so I realize I'm also kind of out of position to really have a big say in any of this. I do have a Sahara Desert unit, but I haven't cored anything because I haven't learned how important that was. And so for the time being in the spring, I just convince, I don't know if I convince, but I'm non-committal to both Congo and Mali. To Mali, I'm saying, at some point they do say, hey, are you going to side with me or Congo? And I'm like, I don't know why I would side with Congo. They are, how could I trust them? And that's fair. I mean, honestly, that's what I was feeling is like, oh gosh, that's the biggest pro Mali argument is why would I side with someone that just immediately betrayed the first alliance I was in? And then with Congo, the discussions are a lot more interesting. There's a lot of back and forth on how we could take down these two powers and how we could split Africa. And I send this huge map where I split up all of Africa between us and tried to establish some DMZs in the middle. The big condition was that I wanted the entire Sahara Desert and I wanted no Congo units in any adjacent province. And I felt like that was a decent split where we could have some kind of balance of power. And the Sahara Desert the whole time did seem like a very strong area to be in and would be a natural issue between me and Mali if we were together, considering I have now 3 SCs bordering. They have 2, and I was just really worried about how we would make that work. So in the spring, I stay non-committal, but I do finally figure out coring. And what I'm doing here is I'm saying to both of them, hey, give me some time. Let me core these 2 provinces so I can be more useful to you. I'm saying this to both people in the war because I'm way out of position. Even if I do help, I need more units. So I'm moving that way. Spain's finally figuring out Tripoli after they messed up, and in addition, I'm also moving down. I don't think Adrian was really like super involved after. I mean, they said, hey, yeah, Congo stabbed, and then there was radio silence again. But I'm making moves that even for Mali, it just looks like, hey, I'm doing the best move I can towards Congo. So looking like I'm attacking Congo. But you can also see that I take Orsongoli, which we had still kept empty. I think this was the last dot on the entire board that had not been taken by a good margin. And I say to heck with that, I'm going to take it. And Adrian says nothing at all. And I'm like, well, it's pretty obvious that, like, I mean, we've talked about this dot for 3 years, and now I've taken it, and we'll see what you do next turn, but you're still moving away. Like, you're still leaving this completely undefended. And I do manage to get into Mecca. Ottoman should have given this up a long time ago. And this is about the extent that I want to go east. Safavid's moving in. Really, I just don't want her to attack me. So everything in spring is just kind of setting up to make a decision down here. Sorry. End up, I say pop Mecca. That's how this move's set to get this fleet out of here. But I'm making peace with Safavid. I'm basically saying, hey, you're good. I don't want to go any further. You don't have to worry about me. I have to go back and deal with Africa. Like, there was a big stab. I have to go handle this. And kind of the same thing with Spain too, is like, hey, I'm not focused on you guys. I have to go back. So we move into the fall. Yeah, that unit was popped, and also Portugal got popped. So Mali made a good move here as far as solidifying their core, and now they're set up to go to war. And they kind of do. I think it's concerning to me that Mali feels like immediately after they get stabbed, they still have enough power to attack Portugal and attack, or defend at least, against Congo at the same time. And Mali is sharing moves with me, assuming that I'm on board against the stabber, and I am going with those moves for this year. And so luckily none of the moves were too detrimental if I wanted to side with Congo. So they asked me to take Mandara. Fair. I'm like, yeah, if I'm with you, I should at least go for Mandara to take Hassa away from the front with you. But I tell Congo this. I'm like, hey, and at this point we've furthered our negotiations on how we're splitting Africa. I've really developed a good rapport with them. The tough thing is, while the decision between Adran and Mali was super easy, and Congo was super easy, the decision between Mali and Congo, who to side with, was a lot harder. They were both very good communicators. Mali did an excellent job, just not as persuasive, not as, just didn't lay out the, I just didn't see as good of a split of Africa down the middle as I did between me and Congo, which sounds weird because you think you could split east-west pretty easily. But I had seen that Mali was a very strong power, and I never felt like I was going to be comfortable with them in the desert. Even if we DMZ'd the desert, how would that work? And then looking down here, there's a concentration of dots on their side versus my side. Like, I tried to look at it, and I just felt way more comfortable with the Congo split. And plus, I was going against Adran anyways, and they were at war, so slightly better diplomacy, and then my focus on wanting the desert really made this decision. But for this phase, I arranged this bounce. I'm like, hey, you got to spare a unit. If I don't do this, it's pretty obvious that I'm not on their side. He says, yeah, no problems. Like, we're working through moves even now pretty well. And again, so little comms that even though I am planning on attacking Adrian, like I throw this support on because Riyadh had tapped him last turn, and I was worried about Riyadh Portugal taking it, Safavid in Portugal taking it. No communication whatsoever. And so, yes, I've taken our neutral dot. I tried to support to help, and they're just like, nope, I'm doing this. I'm moving away when you're moving down next to my cores. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And there's still not quite moving away, but there's still no concern. They're a year away from, almost a year away from some of these centers. And I guess I don't have, but I guess I'm also a year away, but no discussion on what's going on. So, the big move, or the big discussion not involved in the African War here, was Safavid and I, now that we've kind of worked out a good neutral line, have we're trying to discuss Mara and how we're going to handle the continent, the peninsula. And they come to me, and we decide, hey, if anyone cores, this is when coring gets really diplomatic, if anyone cores on the continent, that would be not agreed on. It would be considered an act of war. And we had decided that, I think, maybe a turn or two ago. And then this turn, they said, hey, do you mind if I core Riyadh? And I don't want that at all, because I tell her, if you core Riyadh, I basically have to keep fleets in this area. And part of our agreement is I'm not going to put armies in Saudi Arabia, which is fine with me. And that's a good ask from her, is if I don't put any armies, then I can't go get her. But when she asked to core Riyadh, I'm saying, hey, please don't do that, because, and I think she was asking for it for, honestly, for reasons away from me, but it's too tempting. If you core and you have an army here and I move away, the stab build is just, it's too tempting. I don't think we could ever have real peace here. And I think you and I both want to move on to other fronts. I think it works out for both of us, the arrangement that we have. And please don't core here, because that means we have to keep some units around. And she says, fine, understood, no problem. At least how I remember it. But what you'll see is that discussion is so huge, because as we go on in this game, the Middle East is peaceful. For spoiler, basically the rest of the game, there's never a unit. Once we start getting these out, there's never anything that happens here. There's more discussion on it and concerns and yada yada, but if she had actually cored Riyadh there, even if she had moved units away, the fact that any turn she had a build, she could have built stabbed, was meaning I would have to, and at this time I still have not a ton of units. I don't want to keep units in this area. I want to DMZ and move on. And I don't core any of these as well. So that was a big discussion that had long-term ramifications, and I was happy that we got to the decision we did. Similar to how I arranged with Spain. I mean, I don't have to worry too much up here. One unit for one dot with, and I'm offering to help or do whatever I need to. I think part of this arrangement was also that I would assist in any way I could if Spain and Portugal went to war, which I was kind of hoping for, because at the time, Africa, Portugal losing ground was good. So like every time I get to a neighbor that I think I can work with and has good diplo, I'm just trying to figure out what's the stable arrangement. What do we need to DMZ? Jalo, Pheasant. What do we need to not core? What do we need to do to make this not only stable, but so that we can make these units useful? And that's what I'm trying to talk through. So I finished coring in the fall. I do exactly the moves that Molly requests, the support here, which is anti-Congo, but I did reveal that I was going to Mandara so that bounce could happen. So still leaning towards Congo, but and Congo is very understanding that I'm not immediately stabbing or immediately attacking Mali. I was out of position a bit. They didn't tell me about their stab. I think they really want me on their side. I don't think they want all three against. And so the more, it's probably out of self-interest, but they're very receptive to my delay and fully siding with them. And they totally understand me supporting Mali here. So again, I think it's just because they don't want me going full on against them, because obviously I could take Mandara here with a support, but they're doing a great job. This just retreats and then builds. Oh, we have units here. So Congo's moved way up with the stab, halfway. Ayamara with now we're starting to pay attention, especially as Ayamara and Sweden are moving up. But I'm honestly still not focused on this or terribly concerned. The top one's only over 50%. Builds. I'm always building fleets. I just need more ocean power, I guess. I always wanted more fleets and never had the centers to do it. I just didn't feel like building another army here is going to take too long to get over here, and even too long really to get down here to matter versus a fleet. And that's probably because I didn't core for so long, and now I finally have my first 2 cores. But more fleets. I was always more fleets. Spring of 47. I say always more fleets, but this is the first time where we'll back up one bit, because this right before the spring, I confirmed with Congo they were okay with the giant map that I laid out of how to split Africa. Because when I proposed it like 3 or 4 days before this, we kept talking, but they didn't really acknowledge it. And so before I finally committed in the spring to Congo, I made sure that they were on board with that. And part of the discussion was we, at some point, pretty soon, need to stop building armies or reduce the armies that we're building. Because you can see here, if we both team up against Mali, we don't need a ton of armies. And the more armies we build, the harder the alliance will be to maintain after we take over Mali and Africa. And both of us only have 1 coastal core province. He has Soyo down there, and I have Mekali, of course. And I've noticed that like I've wanted more fleets than I can build, but if we're going to make this alliance work, we have to start coring coastal provinces, because we're about to get a lot of dots, and we gotta stop building armies. Otherwise, we're gonna fight because those armies have nothing else to do. And he's on board, understands, and so spring of 47 was the big stab. And Mali had given me the exact moves they wanted, and also what they were doing with their units, which they had the last 2 years or last 2 phases. And this is the first time I'm like, I take that information and use it against them. And it hurt. I mean, this was like probably the only time in the game I was just straight up lying to someone's face. And there's a lot of half-truths and semi-commitments and that kind of thing, but this was straight up just lying and a big stab. And I think after this move, after this turn, I get 1 message from Molly, and we never talk again. And that was tough, because they were a really good communicator. I understand why. I would have still loved to see some negotiation, but I think they saw the writing on the wall. And the reason this move was so good, and Congo and I had worked through it and tactically decided on it, was it kicks Mali completely out of the desert. They have 2/3 of the desert, and not only do they get kicked out of the desert, I get Spain to to bounce with me in Fezzan. I move Cairo here, and I support using these 2 units. So Mali has nowhere to go but backwards, and that's what I was really concerned with the desert. Is it's so easy to pop out on the other side with the dislodge, and that could have caused a lot of trouble on my side as well. So not only do we, and I proposed this to Congo. I think they had a couple of different ideas, but I said, hey, just because at the end of this war I want to own the desert and everything around it, doesn't mean we can't support you into the desert right now. We can figure out final position later. We need to do the best tactical moves. And so they agreed with it. So instead of taking SH3 support, we know that SH3 is not doing anything. We know what they're doing, so we use that information against Mali, attack the other unit, and not only do we dislodge them from the desert, but they're also still going against Portugal. And growing, by the way. In this war, they're not losing a ton of ground, and they're fighting 2 fronts. And Mali's as I've learned further on, Mali is a very strong power with what they can do. So more and more, I'm happy with the decision, especially with how the game goes on. But probably one of the most important moves. Sorry, I'm going into nitty gritty on how this worked out, but it was super important because it basically makes the rest of this almost a mop-up job. We pushed them past the desert, and we're going to crush. In addition, I'm also no communication. See my, I still don't think they've talked to me since Congo stabbed them, and they're still attacking France and moving away, and I'm against 3 of your centers. Like I didn't want to say anything, but because I wanted to do the stab, but I never even had to lie or really or pretend I wasn't doing what I was doing. They just never asked about it. And Safavid and I, after the whole core discussion, are on board. I think we talked about possibly her having this center, and I decided I needed it temporarily. That was the idea. I always wanted this center, but I convinced her to support me in at least temporarily for the rest of this war going on. And she's in a slightly better, she's triple coring, not doing any huge moves at the moment. I'm like, I need this dot for now, and we can discuss later. And it turns out we never have to discuss. It was fine that I have that, which is fair. It's a year away from my core area. I think it made more sense as my dot, but at the time there was discussion since it was not taken. But she supports me in, and I'm moving in to take Adrian's dots. So the retreat's tough. I mean, full backwards. It's still not, I say mop up, but it's still going to take some time and some maneuvers and making sure they can't retreat back into the desert. But this was one of the best moves as far as making progress and actually gaining centers at a good rate. So fall, we're following up on the stab. The great thing about coring these, convincing both of them it was for them, is now I can build a lot closer and move into the desert. Can follow up with any centers that I'm getting. I forget the tactics, but it made more sense for Congo to get Jenny at this point. And of course, that's a center adjacent to the desert, so eventually I'm going to have it. But I think we built some real trust where I wasn't really concerned about who had what in the moment. I was just trying to make the best tactical decisions on how we could get things. And in my mind, it's like, hey, you take this center for this year because we'll put you in front and like we'll push you forward. And like, yeah, that will be my center eventually, but I don't want to move into it now and then have you behind me. And so there's a lot of discussions on how best to attack this. And yeah, moving just units forward. You can see how much this has emptied out in the past year. I mean, I've moved fleets away, they've moved armies away, and this is great. This is what we wanted. If there had been a core here, I think I would have had to keep something around, and we've completely moved off and we're engaging in our own stuff. And that was the best example of crushing in on a power. And now you have two people who were working together against a common enemy, and what are they going to do? Who have no obligations to each other and had done minimal coordination to that point, and just working on a solution where it's like, this is good, we're both happy, let's go away, and it stays that way. There's some like the idea here is I get up into the med and then support into Smyrna, but Ottomans are going to do this bounce like 3 phases in a row, and it's not that I really want Safavid to get bigger, but I do want them to see that I am trying to help them, that I'm not doing something against them. So that works out well. Yeah, Spain's worried I'm going to move up. I'm like, Spain, I got other issues. Okay, you can please. Ionian Sea has to do this or they lose Smyrna eventually. And you can do something else with these units, please. They've kept to their word, though. We've established a good boundary here. They have 1 army, which was agreed upon. And I'm moving in to get enveloping position on Mali, who has completely taken out Portugal, by the way. I mean, even in they've barely lost anything here and have moved up this way. So very good power. If you're interested in playing a strong power, try Mali. If you want to let's see. Fleet to Cairo. Yep. I'm just looking at my notes here. I wouldn't say there's not complete trust on either side. I'm coring Darfur, which is semi-helpful for advancing on here. They're I wouldn't say the trust level is 100%, but we understand the moves right now are in both of our interests. So, I think we popped. I think that was a force disband, so that was nice. And yeah, so now I have Mavra, and they've been pushed back. I think the idea was when I drew up the map that Zanzibar was going to be Congo. This was kind of going to be the dividing line. At some point, they decide that they'd rather I have Zanzibar, and it was really nice and helps a lot. But I forget how they came to that decision. But yeah, we're just pushing back. So that was one of the most important years for me as far as establishing an alliance. And oh, and yeah, that's the other thing is you see the desert gets painted Abbey Brown because I moved Congo forward, and this is a lot stronger position. Like this went from being a small power that was just being pesky to people to a great. This is the best I felt all game was in the winter of this year. I felt like I'm in 5th place. I'm moving up the board. I've got a good ally. Can I trust completely? Who knows? But I'm keeping up with the people who are getting centers versus being stonewalled, and have a plan on how to expand right now. Of course, it's through Mali and Adrian. So, yeah, let Spain say, hey, you don't have to worry about that bounce. This person's Ottomans have to do this, so go do your thing. And Ottomans are trying to get the end around them, so I think they appreciated me like kind of talking tactics to them and understanding that they didn't have to worry about Tunis. In fact, I move out of Gadamedes. I'm like, okay, that's now that I have the desert, I don't have to keep a unit there. Okay, so they stab, but I can get that back very easily. It's a very land versus sea power, and I could use that unit down here. I need to backfill to make sure that units don't dislodge up into the desert. So Spain and I are working well together. The DMZ has held, even with all this going on with Fezzen and Jalo, and they're moving around to deal with some other stuff. I think they're also, at this point, getting really... Aymara is getting big, and they're getting pushed back. The Spanish had a rough game they were someone who I really wanted to work with, and as you'll see, never really did. But the English was fighting them the entire time during this time, and um, just had a lot more issues than what was going on with me. And I think at the time it was just okay. One power's not messing with me and doesn't want to push in on me, and I appreciate that. But even the English are coming up here, and so that worked out. And Safavid's working against the Ottomans slowly, and has finally gone in on the Mughals. So like they have other fronts they care about, and dealing with the Portuguese here. So two neighbors that I have made good promises with and don't need to attack. Oh yeah, in my notes, I'm like, at this point, I try to get Spain and England to stop fighting. I'm like, hey, can you guys work anything out? Because as I think everyone playing Imperial Diplomacy for the first time, or in A2, you do a dot count of South America, and you realize, oh, someone just needs South America to win the game. One of the Machu Picchu or Mapuche or Aymara, they don't have to go elsewhere. I'm working with Congo, and we do the dot count, and we've got to get off Africa somewhat, the two of us. There's plenty of dots on Africa, but if you're working with another power, you need more dots. But in South America, it's very possible for one power to get it all, and if it's a 4-center start, they win the game, and or they can win the game, I should say. So I'm trying to get them to stop fighting, but they won't. So at least I tell Spain, hey, if they're not going to stop, I'm not going to be your problem for now. So I'm trying to get someone to stop Aymara, and eventually, as you can see, it's just starting. The Asian powers are coming in because they also see the threat, and they're going to start dealing with Aymara. But that's a new thing. The 2 games of normal diplomacy, no matter where you are, unless it's like England, Turkey, you can impact the power that's about to run away. You can do something. You can support someone. You can make a unit move that will directly help, right? But in this game, there can be powers that you're years away from being able to directly impact that can win the game. And so you could be doing your own thing in Asia, perfectly awesome, growing, great moves, great stabs. And if North America collapsed and one power took over, you've got to deal with other powers to try to stop it. You can't do it directly. I really enjoy that about it. Is just about the Imperial variant. Is some people will say, "Oh, that sucks. I played my best game ever and I lost because it was out of my control." And I go, that's diplomacy. You've got to be able to talk to people to convince them to do something to prevent that. It's not always going to be in your unit's control. And a big example of that was here. Neither me or Congo have the fleets. Congo's trying, right? We're starting to move that way to help Portugal, or at least put something against Aymara. But I can't do anything, and I don't really convince. I think these powers just realize the same thing, and they are in a position where they can start moving that way and preventing the runaway. So just a fun note there. We can move on though. Retreats, moving backwards. Fall of 48. Oh, this is when there was a agreement here that I could core Mahra, so that I can move down to get more of Adrian's dots. She allowed me to core here as long as I never put armies in Arabia. And I said, perfect. I do not want to fight you. There's less armies than there was right when we were finally collapsing the Ottomans, but I have no interest in... I've got a lot more going on, and I have a lot more dots that I can take without getting involved up here. So that core happens there, and we follow 48. Oh yeah, my other note was, yes, they finally they also they're moving in strong. So they take a center here, and the Asian powers are coming into South America to prevent this solo, and we can move forward to see. Yeah, IMR and Sweden are both up there. And 71% seems like it's a long ways away from 100%, but it's only 8 centers. And we started counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wow, that's 100%. South America, south of Panama, could have been 100%. And Sweden probably gets big enough to prevent the solo by Ayamara, but no reason they couldn't do a dual victory. We're growing, and we might get to. There's a lot of things that could happen, but they could be at 100% in a year, and we would have to. We're not as convinced we can mow through Mali to get to 75%, so that's the concern. Because you have to be within 25% rules. Yeah. Winter, I do rebuild build an army there, but fleets. We're trying to get fleets, and yes, this is what all the discussion with Congo to this point has helped with. Is okay, we got one army. It's as close as you can get to this front. Fine with that, but 3 fleets. Clearly not putting down armies to come attack me. And actually, I'm just realizing, kind of ran into the core issue that I had. Like, had cored a couple of things, but not too much. Because it takes a while. You can't just core on the front lines. You've got to. This core happened a while ago. I think this is a home center and 1 core down here. So, but fleets, and then I build a fleet. I think I had more builds than this, right? +3. I build 2, and I wave 1. There's a few years here as we're taking down Mali and Adran that I'm waving builds and working out so I can get fleet cores. So this one just finished coring, but that's a big discussion between me and Congo to maintain this alliance for as long as we did. Spoiler through the whole game is no more armies. We don't need it. We have so many armies. What are they going to do? Or we need, even if we say, oh, we're going to convoy them, we need fleets to convoy them. So we're building as many fleets as we can to solidify the alliance, basically. 49 Spring. Only note I have here is that Congo is pushing me to attack Spain. Actually wanted me to take Tunis and like just move up. Like we're almost done here. Move up. Get away. Go do something else. And I forget the exact how this worked out, but I was talking with Spain about how they were going to defend against England, because England has completely moved on this front, and they've taken Rabat and are moving in, and Spain has 2 fleets versus 4 units. I mean, it's not looking good. And I asked Congo to just like, hey, hold off. I think I can work something out with Spain here to be helpful. And we don't want England in Africa. And Spain, thankfully, after some discussion, asked me to move into Marrakesh. And part of that was to, I forget the exact thought process, but was that I could support, or I could keep these centers Spanish instead of English. They needed the backup. They were out of position elsewhere, and we had a good arrangement. We had kept to our agreement for several years now, and they had trusted me to come in and help against the English invasion. So that was great. I have to say I wasn't fully on Spain's side as far as, yes, I knew after we take down Mali and the homeland of Adrianophold and yeah, we're going for Madagascar, but I think this only gets us to like 24, 25 dots. Yeah, we're at 20 and 23. Congo's keeping a lead on me. So I need more dots. I mean, at the end of the day, both of us have to get to 32. Where are those 32 coming from? We start discussing, yeah, we're going to finish off this, and the next most logical point is here. But I'm still very concerned. I mean, they still have 4 fleets in the central med. The Ottomans aren't done. As you can see, we're still bouncing here. This is probably like phase 3 or 4 of this bounce, and but the Spanish finally dislodged that. But it's just going to move to Aegean and do the same thing. So they invite me into Marrakesh. They see me as an ally, and actually, I do want to prop them up to a degree. So you'll see that as we go forward. But trying to see. Okay. So in the fall, yeah, retreat to Aegean. But we do can. How did Sava? Oh, they got Swedish help. That's how they got into Smyrna without me. Like this whole time, part of this DMZ was I am trying to help you. It's not very successful. It's not going anywhere, but I am trying to be on your side. And they get Swedish help to kind of finish off the Ottomans, which I'm not a big fan of since Sweden's board top or near board top right now. But they're also dealing with Portugal shenanigans, which was very entertaining. Portugal snuck behind and caused some issues. They're not growing. I'm not worried about them coming down and attacking me. Is basically the issue, and that's all I wanted out of this so far. This relationship was, don't come this way. I'm well, you can see I have 2 fleets, and then everything else is on other fronts. So basically everything else is on other fronts. Please don't come this way. And they were focused elsewhere, and we had kept our agreement. So moving into the fall, though, spring retreats, yes. In the fall, I guess the idea was I was supposed to get out of Marrakesh so that Anfa could get into Marrakesh, and Spain would have stayed neutral. And yep, this is yep, I lied. I mean, I say Mali was the big lie. This I love Spain because even after this, they reached out and they said, "Hey, why are you taking my centers?" I took Tripoli. I stayed in Marrakesh, and yeah, I definitely stabbed Spain here. But the reasoning was, we'll see when we get to the leaderboard. IMR is still growing and doing good. Yeah, it's like Spain as well, but like doing very well here. You can see like, okay, they're taking centers. I mean, they are close to possibly soloing this. And yes, there's some work against them, but and so when Spain's like, "Hey, why'd you stab me?" I said, I wrote it off. I was like, I'm just concerned about IMR/Sweden running away with this, and I want to stay within 25%. And that was like 70% true. The other 30% was I need more centers. And I was tired of getting bottled up in Cairo. So I got a fleet over, and now I have 2 fleets and can make more decisions in the Med. And finally take Jenny from Congo. I mean, that was, 3 phases ago? Like, we're working very well together in getting to our final arrangement. They've got away from the Sahara. Look at all this DMZ here. Very nice. They decide they want me to have Zanzibar. Lovely. Awesome. I don't know if that was just because they were further ahead of count or why, but it worked out well. And we were trying to stay equal. There was a slight difference, but awesome move here. Getting a convoy through Seychelles down into Imara, and this is where it's like, okay, it's a fall phase, right? It's 49 fall, so you assume that I'm going to try for the dot, and I don't need the dot right now, and I'd rather get position. And so if I get an army here, I border 3 Adrian dots, and that's way better. And you see Congo coring coastal for more fleets. I'm coring coastal. Everything's doing really good, and I needed some growth. And so, unfortunately, Spain, I felt just like got pushed between so many big powers, and yep, I took the opportunity here to take a few more off them, and Africa for African powers was kind of the idea. So yeah, Sweden was at 70, and that was our like discussions. Like, hey, we were worried that Sweden IMR would get big. Well, we're all pretty big now. But 6 builds, 5 builds there. I think if we look at the winter, I'm gonna wave some of those. I wave 1. Whew. So what is this? 1649. Ah, okay. So I was trying to figure out, why did you put armies down? My notes, I said more fleets, of course, and armies agreed with Congo to back up North Africa, and some parentheses, some defense against Congo if they turn after Mali is done. So yeah, we're about to finish off Mali, and ooh, 7 armies here against 5, a couple more that could come in. If there's going to be a stab, the best time to stab is a turn before your friend thinks you're going to stab. And I think we were at that point. So I told him, hey, I'm just not comfortable. I want to put down more fleets, and I do. I put down 3 fleets. Like, I'm not against fleets, but I need a couple more armies just to feel safe. And we have so much of Africa now that we can disperse these pretty well. See, it kind of was useless. Like, oh gosh, you're going to see armies just kind of like move around aimlessly for a few turns. But when you see this, yes, you're assuming that they're going to convoy those out. They got South SAO, they're going to go, but I can't be sure. And this was defensive. And they were like, yeah, that was the great thing, is this whole time, especially now that we finally conquered Africa, Congo and I would constantly say, like, hey, we would discuss stabbing each other. That's a great friend to have, is like, I've looked at how I could stab you here. I've looked at options here. I just don't think it makes sense. And time again, we would go, oh, it just doesn't make sense. If one of us stabs, then maybe Ayamara or Sweden can get the 100%. If one of us stabs, then someone else is going to attack. We just kept realizing and kept showing the other person that stabbing doesn't make sense. In fact, there was a day I was at work, and I was in the middle of typing a paragraph on why stabbing didn't make sense right now. And in the middle of typing that paragraph, Congo sent a message saying stabbing doesn't make sense because of X, Y, and Z. I'm like, I was literally typing that. Like, we were very aware of, and even when I decided to side with Congo way back when, that we realized this probably wasn't completely stable or completely safe, but we kept talking about how to make it safe and stable, and how to not stab each other, or how it wouldn't make sense. It's like the communication went a long way as far as setting up units so that one turn of someone stabbing didn't ruin the game. So that was so we're in 1650 spring. Looking at my notes here, sorry. Oh, this was the first time I got a spectator. We're in November now, and I get a spectator. It turns out to be the A2 Marigold Abyssinia, the person playing my same power in a different game. And I'm so suspicious. I'm like, is this a spy? What is going on? Should I allow this? And by this point, my partner had heard enough of this game, including on vacation, that they also joined as a spectator for me, which actually was really fun, because Safavid like really enjoyed that. Like we still have a great relationship. I forget what we're all talking about, but because we're not really coordinating. I mean, besides like stuff in Turkey, but it really. At some point I was like, well, this is good for the relationship because now you can see everything that I've been talking about, but also it's good because others can see like what a wholesome individual I am. And I just had that note. This is when my partner joined and spectating me and occasionally commenting in the Discord, which was really fun. Oh yeah, I have a note. This was a fun guess here. So, I mean, you can pause and look at the tactics here, but decided to go for Bara, convoy a second army down. I don't know why they're tapping here. I don't know what that gains you. Why are you tapping here instead of Bara? Like just tap Bara, tap the center. I know it's spring, but these moves don't make sense. It works out great, but I can't claim any genius here. You should be tapping Bara and all this gets prevented. Versus, okay, so where did you think I was moving? Fort Dauphin? Like, oh, okay, so if I move to Fort Dauphin, then yes, you can. I don't know. You could figure out, but it felt great to get out and then also come down, and now we still have Zanzibar in the next phase. So, I say Tunis free. Yep. I mean, sorry, Spain. We still communicate through this whole time, and in fact, we still negotiate through this whole time. But at this point, I realize I want more med presence. I would love to get the dream of the Abyssinia people is to get to Europe, and we're trying. So more fleets moving up. Tunis was free. I'm sorry, it's a free dot. I will take it. And by the way, you've let England all up in here, so there's I don't feel too terribly bad about it. Let's see. Yeah, even on my notes, I'm like, I still want to work with Spain. I don't have a vendetta against Spain. They've been great. It's just, we all have to get to our center count, and this is the way I can get there. Especially the easiest way right now. So I'm gonna take dots. And oh gosh, now we have to start talking about the INO. The INO, the Indian Ocean. I finally have moved out far enough, and I should have really mentioned this a few phases ago, but this will become an endgame location. And to see some of the moves that I did in this late mid-game hurts me now. I started coming over here. England has a ton. Ming, who will become huge later, is at 21, and there's a ton. I think this is the first year where I'm like, oh, look at all these hats in a row. This is a lot of units, but it's like half armies, and I'm just dealing in the ocean, and I'm not too concerned. There's still Dutch and Portuguese dots over here. I I haven't really concerned myself with Ming, who will become a big player later. So like, pay attention to what's going on. But at this point, I'm slowly moving over, and we're thinking about Congo and I are thinking about like what other dots can we get, and I'm very wary of Maldives, Ceylon, Ceylon and Reunion. Like, I understand at this point that dots bordering these multi-center oceans or desert are not safe. They're not safe because it's so hard to defend and so easy to take. And I'm in the INO, and at this point, I'm trying to help Portugal against England, and I'm trying to make allies. And they take my support, but they never really seem like they're on my side. It never really, it just gets me nowhere. I should have just kept pushing forward. You see Ming starting to make moves into Bay of Bengal and starting to push back. I should have, if I can go back, I'd be like, screw these dots, get forward into positions on the east side of INO. And I don't. So we'll see how that pans out. Retreats. They just disband the army, so that's fine. And then fall of 1650. What happens here? I have in my notes, second retreat. Oh, and this is where Ming really starts to take over. So I'm just going to go back like quickly, like 1649. This is the first time I move into INO. And look, we still have Athapaska. Look at all this Dutch stuff. England, not a huge threat, and they're going to explode. So this is 1649 spring moves. And then let's go to literally 3 moves later. And look at this position. And now this is where the INO battle starts. It's like, yeah, sure, I got to Gulf of Ceylon, but there's, oh my gosh, Machu Picchu's here. Oh, sorry, I remember what happened here. I gotta give a shout out. They got kicked out of Australia, and they had a plan to. This was when I say Machu Picchu, like Mapuche. Mapuche started in South America, and Ayamara took them over, and they got kicked out to Australia. And there's a whole meme, like, yeah, so you can see here, Australia in exile. And they got kicked out of Australia by Japan, and they make a chat where they're trying to get back to their home country. Like, they're trying to go all the way around the world, and they see that Ayamara is getting attacked. And I'm on board with that, 100%, but I've got other stuff I've got to deal with. And I tell them, like, hey, I can't support you to Reunion this turn, but clearly I'm doing work over here, but ask Portugal. Like, they should be able to support you, and they don't. I'm like, okay, Portugal's not going to help. But this is the first phase where even now, even in fall of 1650, there's still other powers around, but Ming is making moves and doing a great job at it. Whittling down Spain. They're going to keep Portugal alive, but just barely. Mapuche is going to get kicked out. And I start to try to move into position and realize the INO is going to be really important. Oh, and I'm board top for the first time. Me and Congo have moved way up. I think we've stalled Sweden Aymara. That was the big concern. Athapaska's moving up. And yeah, it's good to see. I mean, Congo and I are trying to get to 100%. And honestly, we would love to dual impunity this game. But I think this is the first turn where like it's not going to happen because Athapaska is North America and we have no impact on that. I mean, we can't do too much against this power. I'm attacking Spain, so I have no diplomacy advantage with them to attack. I've never been too friendly with England, and I just helped Portugal against them for, I don't know, dumb reasons, honestly. But because England was attacking Spain here, there's a little bit of animosity. France, I had no relations with. And then the Inuit are the most annoying power I've ever had to deal with. So I stopped talking to them because they were terrible. Moving to winter 50. Oh yeah, so we saw the board tops, and then we're doing builds. The important thing here is not what I built, but what it indicated to other powers. So these builds unintentionally freak Safavid out. I did not mean them to. In my mind, I'm like, how do I advance east? Well, I need armies so I can convoy over. I need fleets to deal with the Indian Ocean. And these are the closest I can put all those units. And there's a huge conversation about this because before I make my spring moves, Safavid comes like, hey, what are you doing here? I'm like, I really am not going for Saudi Arabia. There's like 2 dots, maybe 3. You have a ton of armies to the north. I'm not going after you. My idea is moving right past you into South India and dealing with this huge helmeted Ming line of units that are right here. And just trying to push out and get 100%. And honestly, at this point, I'm not trying to get Safavid to 100%. I just don't want them to attack me, and would rather them focus their efforts against Sweden. Really, Sweden at this point is like the main power that I'm looking to to slow down. Excuse me. So Sweden is, let's see, what, 78%. Yep. So at this point, we're probably looking at a 3-way, but we have to knock Sweden down. And if we can get Safavid to knock Sweden down, then we can probably 3-way board top. I think we've given up on the 2-way almost at this point, though we're always discussing it. But that's the idea, is like, hey, focus this way. Keep this side stalemated, and I'm going to help. And these builds, which I totally understand, and especially with the moves I had planned, I think I was going to Suakin, and like the moves, I told her all of my moves. I was like, this is what I'm planning on doing, and she definitely freaked out and thought I was about to stab her, and had no intention, never did, promise. Did not cross my mind that I was going to attack you. I did not want to attack you. You're doing great work against Sweden and keeping the other powers at least in check. So, but it just didn't work out that way. So we have a huge conversation, and the moves I make here are a direct result of trying to mollify Safavid. And instead of going to Asa, I go down here. Instead of going to Suakin, I go to Tigray to stay off the coast. I move out of Madratin. Like, these are not ideal moves. I move out of Cairo because there's a perpetual concern that I was going to 2-turn stab Riyadh, and none of that was going to happen. I mean, never a thought in my mind. But it puts me out of position, and it was a bit annoying, especially once this whole thing starts happening. But you got to do what you got to do to make sure you keep an ally on side, and was happy to do it. Goodbye, Ming. Close to goodbye, Adrian. And doing more in Spain up here. So I'm trying to get my armies in a position to convoy them for Spain, to convoy them over into Europe to fight Sweden. And I don't know if Spain never believed me or just had other focuses. I mean, clearly they have other things they need to focus on. I think they are still fighting England at this point. They eventually make peace, but they're still fighting England. But I liked Spain. I even with all of taking their centers here, I enjoyed working with them. And at the end of the day, I didn't want to try to push up. Plus, they still have a bunch of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fleets in the Med. I don't want to contest the Med. I would rather take all these armies that aren't doing much right now. We're coring coastal, more fleets. I would rather these armies get convoyed via Spain over to Sarajevo to attack Austria, to push Sweden, because Sweden is preventing. They're within the 25%. So, but it's not looking good so far. But that's what I'm working on up here. Is it ideal? No. I mean, maybe I should be attacking Spain, but like I like working with people that I can converse with, and I really don't want to attack people that are doing good. So I mean that we have good relations with. So, and then we start smashing. In my notes, I say start of the INO smash. So Tokugawa, which I'll probably just say Japan, is coming up into the INO, and now that I'm taking more positions on it, I want to control the INO, and I think I get too fixated on actually controlling the INO versus just moving forward. And I realize we have like a year, maybe 3 phases before Ming is going to completely push up to the INO, and you can see boop, 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 like they're moving up. And I don't like that Tokugawa is also moving up. And to my probably discredit, I never really focused on Asia. And at this point, I'm like, oh, I guess they're working together. It never mattered to me to this point, and it's huge for the rest of the game. I'm like, wow, good job. They're all working. They're coordinating. Great. Awesome. So that's enough on that phase. This retreats. Still only 2 retreats, but it's about to, the retreat number is about to go way up. So, and you can see now we're all black. So all the red arrows, so nice. This is when Foggy taps out and we go to full bot moves. So deal with black arrows and understanding what didn't happen with the retreat phase. Fall of 1651. I think we get to. At this point, I'm trying to slow down Ming. So, like, I understand that this wall of units is coming this way, and Portugal, it was a waste of time to try to help them because they've clearly sided with Ming. They're moving out of Sumatra, letting Ming come in. They're attacking me here. They're not being helpful. And I thought they would. Like, if someone comes up to you and is just like, "Hey, I'm going to help you. I'm next to you. What can I do for you?" and then to completely not only turn on me, which okay, fine, I'm board top, I get it, but to turn on Mapuche, who was just trying to get back to their home center, and like not even engage in that fun antic, and Portugal was the main person that not prevented it but didn't help it. I was like, and they were not very again like Adran, they just weren't very communicative. They asked me for something like an hour before moves were due with a day extension, and I just got flashbacks to having to deal with people that aren't like really involved in what's going on. So I take Maldives, and this is just trying to prevent Ming from moving up. An interesting move here that really helps the rest of the game is the last minute. I think I proposed this convoy, Halbio to Bijapur. I proposed it early on, and Safavid had other things they wanted to do. I was like, that's fine. That was a long shot anyways, and kind of set myself up doing other stuff. And then with like 2 or 3 hours left, they're like, you still want to do that? I was like, yeah, that was the whole point of the armies that freaked you out, was not to attack you, but was to like reinforce the north and then also get units in position to convoy. So when they offered to convoy, I was like, oh, thank goodness. And this turns out to be really nice for some of the later game stuff. And the convoy goes through because it's a fall phase, and in a fall phase, no one is not focused. I say they're not. It's not that they're not concerned. It's just in a fall phase, you're focused on dots. And so a convoy into a non-dot is great. And that went through. Oh, I'm coring in the med now. Yep. I am still supporting Spain against English shenanigans. Congo's managed to get some fleets up here, and so we're doing some work in this area. But I think last phase, if I go to spring moves, I started a core with Tripoli and told Spain that, oh, I was just doing that for convoy opportunities. And at that time, it's true. It was very true. And then we arranged this in the fall. I say, I prefer you and Ionian. Ionian is great because if you're an Ionian, you can convoy Ionian, Otranto to Dalmatia, or to Sarajevo with some supports. So I'm still trying to work with Spain here. I'm saying, great, we arrange this. We do this 3 versus 2 in Ionian on purpose to make it look like we're fighting, so that Austria thinks they don't have to worry about Spain and me. And it's not, sorry, Austria, it's not against you. It's just, I want to get up to Sweden to knock them down off 75%. And that will probably involve a little bit of Austria invasion, but I have no intention to knock. It's all about Sweden, especially with Sweden taking Sarajevo, and Safavid is up here, and I want to help, and I'm trying to get up there, and so I'm constantly talking to Spain about getting me convoys. We're talking about convoying to Rome and moving around. We're talking about going to Dalmatia, and we arranged this. We arranged this whole thing. And this is great. I'm like, finally, we have a line that I can actually get my armies off, and I can get convoyed over. And I even tell Spain, I'm like, whatever dots I take, you can have. It's not, I'm at 100%, or I will be at the end of this year. I'm not trying to get more dots. I'm trying to get to a position where we have impunity, and you can have the dots behind me. Great, go for it. And so they're fine with these cores. They don't seem to mind that much. And at some point, I'm like, Spain's not, they're moving east. They're adding fleets to the Med. They're not fully committing to the convoy opportunity and kind of been neutral on it. I'm still supporting them in Tangier. I don't want England taking more of Africa. Congo's moving up. We're trying to deal with this situation, but I'm still on side with Spain here, or roughly on side with them as far as trying to get armies. These are all armies. Army. Trying to get armies up to push past them because I've enjoyed them as an ally. Austria takes Sarajevo. I'm like, great. We have a path here where I can push up with Safavid and we can push Sweden back. I take Maldives. Hadrian finally falls. That's about it on the retreats. And we got to our 100%. So if we're looking at this is the first time we're really like, okay, how do we end the game? Sweden's at 75%. Ming will probably need to be allowed into the 100%. Athapaska. Safavid, at this point, still we could knock down, or King, the northern Chinese power, could take a few of Safavid dots, or we can work out an impunity here with probably 4-way. It's not looking like a 2-way is possible at this moment. But then again, we still have room for growth. And if we can keep powers below 100% and get 15 more %, maybe we can still 2-way this. So a lot of discussions on how, but I think both of us at this point want to end the game. And spoiler, there's 3 years left. So I'm still focused on just smashing fleets in the INO, so build more fleets and pushing out. We're almost completely, I call it the INO bubble. So there's 21 fleets that can occupy either the INO or spots around the INO, including the islands. And so it starts to become a numbers game, especially seeing the fleet wall of Ming is we want to control the numbers in the INO. I'm not really trying to push that much in there. It'd be nice if I could, but we're trying to keep Ming down to maintain an edge over them percentage-wise. But at this point, we realize that's probably not going to happen. Ming has a ton of opportunities to get to 100%. Okay, got to let them into the impunity. Athapaska, yeah, Athapaska can definitely get to 100%, and we have even so little impact on this, especially with all these fleets out here. So Athapaska would get into it, and okay, let's have a 4-way impunity. Let's get these 4 powers to 100% and call it a day. But Ming and Safavid may be knocked down. I mean, between Ming and myself, we're not coordinating, we're not scheming, but at the end of the day, if Ming is completely self-interested, we can knock Safavid down and have the 4-way. Ming has a very different playstyle than me as far as how they go about accomplishing things, and it turns out that later we kind of learn Ming, King, saying it wrong, but I'm going to say King and Tokugawa, Japan, are in a big triple alliance, and also have had Safavid as like a 4th power. They've had a 4-way chat, and that 4-way chat has done what they've done. They've accomplished a ton. And in my mind, I'm like, well, let's look at the leaderboard again. These 2 powers are below 50%. And Ming's at 90. Like, Ming has almost as many centers as Tokugawa and King combined. Like, how strong of an alliance can that be if two players have 35 and the other one has 33? So surely Ming wants to finish this off and in this game, and we'll just stab to get a couple more centers. But they are very loyal, and Tokugawa is very loyal to Ming, and that causes a lot of heartache in the next 3 years. So in the spring of 1652, Athapaska's clearly moving, gonna get their 100% against the Inuit. Thank goodness. I'm sorry. I sound like I hate the Inuit. Their diplomacy style was the few interactions we've had early on. They just were like, "Well, who are you going to attack next?" And I told them like Mali. We were finishing off Mali, and they're like, "Well, what are you going to do after that?" I'm like, "I'm sorry. We have almost no interaction. I don't understand why you're pressing that I tell you what I'm going to do 2 years from now. Why would I tell you that when we have no there's nothing strategically advantageous about telling you who I'm attacking next. I don't even know who I'm attacking next, and if I did, why would I tell you?" And they were like, "Well, I'll tell you." I'm like, "No, dude, I've seen you in the public channels. I've seen you in the World Friendship Forum. You're just stirring shit, like just a gossip hound, and clearly telling people lies." I think at this point, Athapaska was like, "Congo's going to stab you. Congo's going to stab you." And I have to guess that a lot of that conversation was from the Inuit, that like just stirring stuff up. And I had to be pretty harsh. I try not to be, but Athapaska, like several messages in a row, was like, "Hey, you need to be worried about Congo. You need to be worried about Congo." And I'm like, "My guy, I offered to throw to Congo probably around this time. I was like, hey, if Ming is not gonna abandon these powers below 50%, if they're gonna insist on dragging them to the end, I don't want to play that long. So like, I'll throw you centers, and we can have a Congo solo, and I'll feel great being Kingmaker." And Congo, to their credit, was he said like, "I appreciate it, but I don't think we're there yet. Like, I think we could wait several real months before we need to threaten to throw." Because I was looking to end the game, I really was. So when Athapaska is like very strongly insinuating that Congo's going to stab me, I'm like, you're getting shit in your ear from excuse my language, but Inuits just being a idiot, and you're probably listening to it. And no, I offered to give them the game and they wouldn't take it. So no, I don't think Congo is going to stab this year. So sorry, but that's my least favorite player. I don't appreciate just throwing around misinformation and asking for strategy or moves from someone across the board. I just ignored them and had a better game for it. So 1652 spring. Oh, this was a big one. So I just talked last turn about how, okay, we're all set up. Now we can do a convoy, and it's not happening. Spain, I think in the winter, let me go back one turn just to show another med fleet build. And then we go to the spring, and sorry, so they built another fleet in the med, and then did not convoy me again, and moved on Rome themselves. And so I'm like, okay, this is not going to happen. Like, I don't know if they don't want it to happen or if they're concerned, but now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fleets in the Med for Spain. I have 4. So now it's gone from, wow, you're being defensive, to that's looking like my position isn't secure. Like, how many armies can I put back here to really backstop that? And they're gaining more centers. They're gaining Rome. They're moving in on Genoa. They've already taken Athens earlier on. I'm not a fan of this. I wanted to be convoyed, and it's not happening. So as soon as they stab Rome, I reach out to Austria and I say, hey, was that agreed? And they say, no, of course. I'm like, all right, let's take Athens. We've got 1, 2, 3. There are 3 fleets against it, but we can tap one. Let's take Athens off them, and we can move forward. Because now is the point where I'm like, look at this phase. I'm still supporting Spain. I really did want to support and move past them, but when they took Rome and they're working on Austria without me, or without convoying me up, I said, okay, we need to move against them. And I was gonna have in my notes, Rabat did a great guess. So I cored Marrakesh last turn, so this would have been the second core to make it happen, and decided to not finish the core to move up to take Rabat, and England did an amazing guess there. So, but I've built a fleet down here, and we're moving up and handling the English threat. So, my other note is the INO bubble is almost full. Tokugawa and I had a great conversation this whole time. They claim they were moving to South America. We cleared out Crozet Basin. We did everything. If you really wanted to move to South America, we had the path clear. We were trying so hard to, because at this point I didn't realize the amount of the alliance, and I was like, okay, fine. Like, if you want to go to South America, if you want to go around the world to South America, great, do it. Go attack Southern Sea. Go. We're all for it. And at the end of the day, that just wasn't really what they were doing. They were helping Ming, and both Congo and I kind of realized it. And so we're just smashing ships, and we're slowly filling up this bubble. So now you start looking around the Indian Ocean, and you can see all the units streaming in. There's, besides Crozet Basin and GAB, and INO 3, everything else is full. So once we start filling this up, dislodged units are going to start to pop, and it would become a stalemate. And it's really interesting because I've never played Imperial Diplomacy before, and trying to understand what's the best strategy around these ocean, especially this one. Like, the other oceans, thank goodness I didn't have to deal with this, where you have 5 spots and 5 spots next to each other. The INO is very interesting, where it's 5 spots amongst like a bunch of single spots. And these areas are a lot bigger. Gosh, I don't even want to do the count of how many units completely envelop the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean. But there's a firm count here in the Indian Ocean. It's 21. It's 21 spots with the 5 here and then the 16 around it. And that's manageable. I say that's manageable. That's like, that's more dots than it takes to win standard diplomacy. But it's at least reasonable, as far as at this stage where we're at 30 units apiece in Africa and 20 something for these guys, to just send units that way to try to take advantage. And we'll see that in the next phase. Retreats. That's the great thing about these spots is you can retreat and you're essentially at the same spot. And this one I tell Toku, I'm like, hey, yeah, you got pushed out towards what you say you're going for. Go there. Like, go towards South America. And yeah, we're in good control here so far. So this is the fall of that year, and I work with Austria and Safavid to take Athens. We tap, we take, and I start moving against Spain because I realize, okay, Spain's not going to convoy me. It took a while, but I realized that's not going to happen. And so weird, they don't go for. They had Venice guaranteed, and they had Rome guaranteed, but they decided to do this and lose a center. But I told Austria last turn, I'm like, hey, they've got Venice and Rome guaranteed. They're clearly not moving against England. They're not moving out of the Med. And Austria was like, yeah, that wasn't arranged. I will help you into Athens. No problem. I'm like, great. So what do? I take that opportunity to move against Spain, move up. Could add Sicily there. Didn't expect that. Self-bounce in Tripoli, move out of Tunis, 2 more fleets. So now I can go from 4 to 6, still against their 9. And then I start talking to Safavid about getting Black Sea down. I'm like, let's move on the Med. This is happening. Wanted to work with you, Spain, but I guess got greedy or didn't trust me or something. There was a general kind of build up here. I totally understand. This is the first turn I actually like intentionally don't support Spain. And I think this is finally when Spain and England actually start to work together to actually fight against other stuff. So clearly they had their own stuff going on, but also managed to win the 50-50. I say 50-50. No, I just finally got up into Anfa, and that will help in later phases. Let's see, what do I got? Oh, 3rd retreat of the game. Where do I get this? Oh, INO5, I think is. Let's see. Yep, 3rd retreat. 3rd and 4th retreat of the game. I get pushed out. And this will just be a big ship smash and stalemate. And I'm not sure if it's like mathematically a stalemate, but it will just be yeah, just a big cyclone for a while. Okay, just looking at my notes, sorry. So I tell Tokugawa, we have a good, I don't know, a good banter throughout this whole time. Because, like, clearly they're scared of getting stabbed by Ming, and they're not really, I mean, they are, I mean, hey, they're there, they're moving that way, but they feel like they need to have a couple of INO spots to prevent me from going for their centers. I have no interest in their centers. They're at like 45% victory percentage. My whole thing is just trying to stop. Look at this. Look at all these fleets. My whole thing is just trying to control the INO so I can do something against this. And yet Tokugawa thinks they need this for defense. I don't care about your centers, man. I really don't. But that's fine. But we're able to have a dialogue, and I say, hey, I think a phase before this, I said, if I ever get kicked out towards some open center, I'm not going to attack you. I'm going right back in. I'm trying to control this area. I get Ceylon there. He has Reunion already. The convoy over. This will be huge because it's an army that can't get tapped by any of these fleets. And so now I can support Safavid into Maduria. And there's a bunch of tactic stuff in here that's really interesting if you go back and look at the maps, but not strategically that important. So Athapaska got to their 100% great. Ming still refuses to accept a impunity without King or Toku. So, and I haven't heard this from them 100% directly, but from what they have said to me and what they have told others, that is the condition. And I'm sorry, these powers are below 50%. I do not want to wait for them to get up or have to do that grind. So if Ming won't accept impunity without these powers also getting up, the best path to victory is try to hold them at around 90% and for us to get to 125. So Athapaska has a pretty good path to sorry, I say 125. It should be 115, right? Because we have to be 25% above the next power that we want to declare impunity from. So the three of us need to be at 115, and that would be 25% above the next power, and the three of us could declare impunity. So that's the idea, is let's just hold Ming down. Safavid's working against them. I think we can hold everyone around 90%. Athapaska has a great path to 115. I'm almost there. I think I need like two more centers, and Congo needs 2 or 3, and we could do a 3-way impunity. So that's the idea, is we'll just hold Ming. Athapaska will grow against the Inuit in Spain, and we'll get some centers somewhere to get to that victory condition. See what else we got. Just a lot of smashing, and I get Safavid up into Madeira with thanks to her convoy, so that was awesome. But we're losing the battle against Ming. Ming is a pretty good tactician, and also has an amazing ability to work with the very small powers. So Portugal and Mongols and even Spain really work well with them. And there's also some movement here against Athapaska. And yes, we have we have Ming in California. So while we thought at the time there was some discussion like, okay, Athapaska can easily get up, it's not looking good. I was surprised that their stab against Inuit didn't quite work out. Now Inuit's moving down, and I'm trying to get Safavid, and I get her down into the INO because I just want them. I need the win the balance, right? I need more friendly fleets versus unfriendly fleets. But honestly, this is a ton of tact. This was, especially after getting to 100%, this was probably the most frustrating part of the game, is there was a lot of thought that had to go into Indian Ocean moves. And for anyone, I don't know, this is my 2 cents, but don't support with units in the ocean when there's everything around it, because they will probably get tapped. So what I do with the Indian Ocean units is use them to tap things that I think are supporting. So INO Force taps Cocos Basin because that looked like a unit that was probably going to support. But then I tapped this unit, which did move. So I don't know. Like, if you support using a ocean fleet, you have to be pretty confident that it's not going to get tapped itself. And now that we've completely filled up this area, let me see. There is not a single unit in this ocean that's not getting an attack against it, or at least not getting moved against it. So don't use ocean fleets to support when everything is this full. Use it to tap something on the edge and try to work around it. We're getting close to the end here. Oh, this is probably one of the more fun moves. So this is one of the few tactics, just because it was a really entertaining one. Looking at this area, you can pause and look at it yourself, but I didn't really. So now that I'm fighting Spain, I didn't really care that England, with no units around, owned Rabat. So you think it's a fall move. I should sit in Rabat so I own it next turn. But there wasn't any advantage to that. So I used all three to move. And then if you think about taps and who can tap what, the best thing to move was Rabat. And so moving Rabat with strength 3 to Tangier, getting Canary Basins to tap Sea of Azores so that it went through. Okay, so that leaves Rabat open. But then also using these 2 units to tap or to attack my ally, causing the ally to get dislodged, and you'll see in the retreats, now the ally gets to move into Rabat. Just a fun, like, throw assumptions on their head. And so, like, if Spain is thinking, well, they're not going to move Rabat because they need to own that center at the end of this phase. And also looking at what could tap what, that was really fun to dislodge the ally into a center that they didn't own, and it worked out well. Now I get stuck with armies when I really want fleets up here, but for the first time in the entire game, the continent of Africa is completely owned by myself and Congo. So, and to do it with that move was really enjoyable. The other thing I say just after that grand announcement of peace, unity, conquer, it turns out, let's look at this board. So we get to 117, and Athabasca only manages to get to 107. So they're slowing down faster than we realized. And Ming jumps over 100%. So the whole discussion on three-way is gone at this point. But we're talking about winter builds, and Congo calmly mentions, because I'm like, I'll throw a couple fleets over here, fleets, I have, I left these open, I'll throw some fleets up here, yada yada. And they're like, are you sure you don't want to throw an army down in, I don't know, Darfur? I'm like, what good would that do? They calmly told me, I was very close to stabbing you last turn. And so I had really lost focus on Africa. With, once you get off and you're dealing with the INO, you're dealing with the Med, we're talking about what's going on over here. And so I turned back, and thankfully I did not tell Congo everything I was doing, though I think I remember telling them, let's look at the spring moves. Oh, fall moves. I remember telling them I was moving out of Nadarko, and I told them something else that was pretty useful. I did not tell them, thank goodness I did not tell them I was moving. I have no idea why I'm moving out of Sakalava. But they tell me in the winter, hey, I almost stabbed you because you're very open right now. And I look at it, and I thought, I got some units around, and we should be fine, but this is not how you set up defenses. So if you really want to set up defenses, don't do holds here. Bounce. Because a stab, you can't prevent a stab on this one center unless you're doing a bounce. So if you think you have units around that actually are protecting, but they're not unless they're bouncing. Because otherwise he could stab and then I'm a turn late and this unit can move up. So this isn't real defense. Like, you need to be bouncing to make it matter. Same thing here in Jenny. Like, oh good, I have a unit. I'm one move away from their center. They're one move away from mine. No, this isn't defense, because if they had stabbed this turn, they moved to Timbuktu, they backfill, they support themselves. Yeah, sure, the Sahara might be able to do something, but this is fall moves. So Timbuktu becomes Congo, and then, I mean, I told them I was doing this. Why? Oh, I remember why, but it's terrible because I was worried about the Inuit like sneaking into this area, and I was like, hey, we need to do some stealth bounces and work in this area. I told him I was doing this. So that's the stab. So you got 1, 2, 3. I'm not even defending this at all. 4. Thank goodness I didn't tell him this one, because that would be 5. And if you do the math, that solos Congo. Take 5 away from me, add 5 to them, they're 25% above me. I'm pretty sure. I think we looked at it after he mentioned, hey, you might want to drop an army. And that's how quick it can happen. So be smart about how you're actually defending. And I'll show you the next year, which is the last year, what that means. So thankfully that was a very soft lesson to learn, but that could have been a lot worse. And the only reason he did not do it, he told me, I mean, kudos. If you'd done it, I would have loved to. That would have been the best stab ever. I would have said, good game. He thought Athabasca was going to gain more centers, and that while he might have been 25% clear of me, he wasn't going to be 25% clear of Athabasca. So, whew. Yeah, a lot closer than I thought. And yeah, this just isn't good defense. So ask for bounces if you really want to do true. Like, I don't mind not asking for a bounce here. It's not really useful or somewhere here, but when you have an ally set up like this and we're just sitting here, that's just asking for one person to stab before the other. Be bouncing. Be bouncing somewhere. And you'll see how I set that up next phase after I realize how dumb I was. So we got 4 people over, and we miss, I forget about this. Safavid is 1 center short. 1 more center, and we are clear of the whole board by 25% impunity. Done. Now, I don't think Ming was ready to accept it at this point because they still wanted to. So that was the idea, is like, well, we don't have the other 2 Chinese powers high enough, and so they're going to reject it anyways. So it wasn't the end of the world, but I think Safavid in the fall moves out of this dot. And that, like, just sit there. Why not? I gave you Athens. Like, why not just chance the impunity vote, right? But Ming at this point is still very loyal to both King and Toku. Now, I asked at the end of the game and never really got a good answer on if you're, especially slightly earlier on, if you're the other 2 allies, if you're King, if you're Tokugawa, and you are barely combined as much as your quote-unquote ally, and they are now a challenger. They are now in position to, with 1 vote, be in the impunity or not. why not take their capital? Like, that's what I would do. Is if one of my allies was way ahead of me in center count, if I'm king, I'm saying, hey, thanks for staying within range of Abby and Congo. Really appreciate it. You're preventing them from running away with the game. Just so you don't join them and turn on us, we're going to take your capital, because part of the rules is you have to have your capital to win the game. And so if I'm Toku and King, that I would have insisted, once Ming got way ahead of them in center count, to just say, hey, that's fine. Like, you're our a wall against an impunity, but to make sure you don't just flip sides, we're going to take Beijing. Never did that. Just relied on Ming loyalty, and surprisingly has paid off so far, bizarrely. So cool. You can see I'm just like, what the heck is going on? But luckily for us, we move into the winter and King subs out. Huge. So huge. Even the builds reflect this sub. I mean, it's a stab. I forget. I say the builds reflect this, but I guess they subbed in right before the fall phase. Yep, because there's a stab here, and I get it. Like, if you're coming in as a sub and you're like, "What is going on? We're way behind." Like, all three of us can't make it there. It's going to take years. So I appreciate the new king coming in and actually being an independent player and realizing there's dots. Let's take them, and it almost got him there. So in the spring of the final year, after Congo was kind enough to tell me, hey, it's too tempting, I do make moves back towards, we arrange a bounce in Zanzibar. I cover dots on Madagascar. I set up, so move to Timbuktu to prevent any spring shenanigans, and then I can bounce with SH1 and Jani, and Canem and SH2 can bounce in Darfur. So that kind of closes off those free dots. Follow up into, after the builds, the fleets, follow up and just cover nearby dots, so that that option isn't there. Should have happened quite a bit ago. Kind of playing for position against Spain in case this game goes on even further. Moving fleets over, still with the dream of getting to Europe. Never realized. Somehow get Sardinia, which is really interesting. Moving the Ottomans up, sorry, not the Ottomans, the Safavid up, and I mean, we're committed to, okay, if the game goes on, this is where we're going to get dots eventually. Have really moved forward in this area, but at this point with the King Stab, Ming is worried about an Athapaska solo, which I feel like really stalled out as far as an option, especially now that Spain and England are working together. The Inuit are obviously trying to defend. They've cleared out NAO. Got a few dots where they could and are defending, and then the rest of the powers are going to, I think, contain that pretty easily. I think the big issue was Tokugawa was had declared as a vassal for Athapaska, so there was some concern that this was going to work. I never really saw it happening, but I was just happy the Asian Triple had kind of broken up, and was very happy to support Ming against Toku, to get them out of INO, to just kind of clear this area out and hopefully end the game. The idea was that we were still going to get King into the alliance, and after the spring moves, I saw that King was not going to make it to the 75% threshold, and Safavid for sure was hopefully going to get to 100%. I think after the spring phase, I told Safid, I was like, make sure you're at 100%. Defend, do whatever you have to do, be at 100%. Because Ming had declared the World Friendship Forum, the whole thing that the UN, that they were not going to vote on impunity without the majority of the world also agreeing that they should vote for the impunity. Which was interesting. They have a lot of loyalty amongst very small powers. They've kept them alive here. They had kept Spain alive until this turn in Indonesia. They had a lot of friends on their side, and it was a great strength for them. And I appreciate just like the meta of I want the world to agree to this victory, even amongst the powers that are not going to be involved. Which we're down to like 15 powers, and 5 people are going to be in this impunity. So, and Athapaska, I think, had denounced the World Friendship Forum, the UN, so they couldn't even vote. And if Ming abstains, we're down to 13. 4 of those people, me, Congo, Safavid, and Athapaska, are included in the victory. And we're a week before Christmas. So I think I told Congo and Athapaska, I'm like, King's not going to make it to the threshold to prevent the vote. The vote's going to happen. I want to pressure Ming to stick by their word and let their vote for impunity be dependent on the WFF. Because my concern was we get to that vote and they go, no, we need to wait till King gets there. Just like the past couple of years, they've been like, no, I'm not going to vote yes unless both powers are in. Now it's just King, and King wasn't close enough. And so my big concern was they would balk and say, no, we need to wait. We need to play a few more years so King can make it. And I was going to call him out on that and say, no, you said your vote was up to the WFF. Like, that's what you said. You can't have it both ways. You can't have conditions on you voting yes based on King being in the impunity, and also say my vote is not up to me, it's up to the world. And so when I saw King wasn't going to get there after these spring moves, I was ready to just guns blazing say, hey, this isn't right. To their credit, Ming, as soon as the spring moves had gone through, and they're going to gain a ton of centers here. We're popping the English fleet here. I'm just looking at any notes. Positioning in the dots. Yeah, I want to get to Europe. Yeah, not going to happen. And so we get to the fall moves. And I'm still attacking Toku, bouncing, so we can pop the Toku fleet up in Gulf of Mannar, and doing exactly what I said down here, trying to actually do a decent defense against Congo, not because they're attacking me, just to keep them honest. The one funny thing here is we're tied at 37, and they wanted me to pop the fleet in Reunion so they could rebuild it over here in case the game went on. And the agreement was I take Reunion, they take Zanzibar. And I still bounced them in Zanzibar. I told them after the vote happened, I was like, honestly, I just did that because I hope to be board top. And they're like, fair. That's the same reason I did this move, was to be board top. And I'm like, yep. But to Ming's credit, they did not insist on King make it. I don't know if it was new player or just like ready for the game to end. We're less than a week to Christmas. I think we were like the 3rd or 4th to last game to finish. There's still a couple of games going on, A and B. Sorry, Captain Meme. But almost every other game is finished, and it's the holiday season, and I was struggling to like keep not interest. I was very interested, but to keep, especially with having 37 units to move around and a bunch of it really not mattering too much, to just keep that I don't know, motivation going. And I love, this was not coordinated in any channel I was in. It might have been in other channels. I was not a part of this, but we had like 4 or 5 parties like call back the WFF and send units to Moscow like we did 10 years ago. And I just thought it was so cool. Useless, makes the map difficult to read, whatever. That's part of the fun. So at the end of this phase, I lose Sardinia. Great moves by Spain, honestly. You can see with the final board state, I think that's fine with me. I think this will still be a struggle, but so close. I might have some options here, and it's hard not to like think about what could happen in the next year. You know, it's like you get tired of these last couple of years. Like, I just want it to end. I want it to end, and then when it ends, you're like, oh, but my moves for next phase would be so interesting, and what I could do, and what would I want to do, and I think they might have had a. It really doesn't matter, but I'm not sure if like retreats went through or how this final board state worked out, but I'm like, this would have been so fun to play and actually get into Spain, and a fun game, totally fun. So the board state ends here. I believe Congo said they called for the vote. It's a 5-way impunity: Congo, Abyssinia, Athabasca, Ming, and Safavid. She made it. That was amazing. Very happy. I think she played the best game of diplomacy of all of us. She was dealing with what I thought was the Asian triple, but she was nominally a part of it. She kept me on side the whole game. We ended with, for the last 5 years, nothing touched Saudi Arabia. Had a great alliance. I didn't get much out of this, honestly. I really wanted to move up there and never happened, but it was fine with the rest of the board. I didn't even mention, like, Congo actually, pushed into South America hard. They could talk more about that, hopefully, in the joint commentary, but they were doing stuff over here and getting centers and keeping Ayamara down, and there was a lot of intrigue in South America that just wasn't my focus. Just happy to see Congo not attacking me and moving that way. And my gosh, like 10 units over there at the end of the day. They did so much better with South Atlantic Ocean than I was doing with Indian Ocean. It made me jealous, but really cool to see. I'm trying to think of just kind of, so we call the 5-way vote. Congo, I think, actually calls it. Ming calls for the vote in the World Friendship Forum to impact how they will vote. It's unanimous. I have to check the final vote, but it got up to like 9 or 10 yeses, and I never saw a single no. And I was ready to pounce on them and say, hey, don't you dare hold out. To their credit, they called the vote themselves. I never had to put pressure or anything. I guess the worry was Athabasca at the end said they were going to vote no. In fact, voted no and then changed their vote. Because me and Congo were yeses. Safavid, I'm sure, was a yes easily. Ming, after the World Friendship Forum vote, was a yes. So the 4 of us were fine. And when Athabasca said they voted no, I'm like, are you kidding? Like, do you think your position's going to improve? You're 1 center above being out of this. You've got everyone around you against you. I think this was the best time for you guys. Like, if you voted no here, I would have been super shocked, because I don't want to go into the tactical minutia, but like I think this was about as good a result. I don't think you were going to solo. I think this was about as good a result as you could hope for, and I think you would have started getting pushed back, possibly below 100%. You've already lost a couple centers, so yeah, I joked with Congo about keeping Zanzibar, trying to end up on board top, but I didn't realize Ming was getting like 7 centers, like just bull rush through, and well deserved. It was the last 3 or 4 years. The world revolved around Ming, and they held the most influence, and so I think a board top is well deserved for determining the end game like that. I mean, my early game, I really floundered. I feel like, and with vacation and just being new to the game, wasn't doing great. And Congo stabbing really threw me a lifeline to be a more active, aggressive player and a more diplomatic player. And so the mid game was probably my best part, and never really considered soloing. I like alliance play. I love the negotiations that go on with. You saw it this whole game, creating a stable border with Salvavid, creating a stable border at the time with Spain, and then after the stab, or kind of stab when England moved in, trying to create another stable border, and then another stable border, and move past them and just deal with the main threat. And like, I really do try to ally, and I think I box myself in a few sometimes where I'm not aggressive enough and stabby enough, but I'd rather work with people, and I honestly hate lying to people's face. The Molly stab was the worst I felt the whole game, because they were great, and it was just choosing between what I thought was the best there. And the Spain stabs were minor and just advantageous, and then one was because they weren't doing what I was asking and I was a bigger power, and it upset me. and it was a bit offensive just because they were getting so much power in the med. And outside of that, there wasn't. I mean, Audra and I barely consider a stab, because you have to lie to someone to stab them, and we didn't talk that whole time, so I don't. It's tough to call that a stab when you just have someone who's not responsive. I think they asked me to hold on to their main centers a turn before I took it. I'm like, that's too late, my guy. Like, this is not the time to ask for that. It was a year and a half ago when Congo stabbed and we first started making moves towards you. But I love setting up. Yeah, I love setting up DMZs and good relations, and setting up situations where a stab takes more than one turn, which is why the Congo discussion at the end was so interesting that I let that open. Because I feel like you have to build trust, and trust only gets built over multiple turns, and so you have to coordinate, and once you can coordinate, then you can negotiate, and once you negotiate, then you can get away from each other. You can I don't know, disassociate. You can move away, and Safavid was probably my favorite person, just pure interaction. Congo was my favorite person as far as tactical, to the point, no BS, no nothing. Just a great person. Both these players were great to deal with. The small interactions I've had with a few other players on the board, I was like, I'm so glad I did not have you as a neighbor. The neighbors that I settled on, even with disagreements, Spain, Safavid, and Congo were amazing to deal with, and really made the last 3 months just so fun. So fun. I've signed up for the beta, donated to the bot people. Just have loved playing this game, and obviously I'm doing like a freaking 3-hour commentary solo, and hopefully doing a joint commentary. But It was just a blast. I love it so much more than the base game because you can make those alliances that can last to the end of the game. The Captain Meme, the first A2 video, Ezio did a really good explanation where he's like, hey, in base diplomacy, if you want to win the game, you're going to have to stab everyone. You're going to have to lie at some point to everyone in order to win the board. And you don't have to do that here. And he was just pointing out differences in the game, whether you like it or not. And I think that's what drew me to the Imperial game is I like that ability to actually form alliances. And it's not just like, hey, you and me team up, we're going to roll over the board. It's we're going to team up. We're going to have to negotiate the whole time. And we're going to have to set rules and DMZs and keep center count balanced, which we did so well versus, I think, other alliances, keeping center count balanced and talk the whole time and talk with other powers. And it's just more of my play style, I think, is I like aligning with people and finding someone that I can really work with and go through all that minutia. And yeah, lots of fun. Really, really fun board. I'll stop rambling on. And yeah, if you're playing Abby and the beta games, hopefully this gave you some, I don't know, help. It's definitely a great power to play as a newbie. I mean, at the beginning of the game, I barely understood cores and convoys and Cairo, and by the end of the game, I felt like I have a much better, if you look back at some of the tactics, a lot better understanding of diplomacy as a game and the moves you can do. But Abyssinia is a great power to play as a pure beginner. I'm still scared to go play a colonial. I think I picked Ottomans, the Shoshone who are gone. I think I picked Ming and a few others for the beta games, just because I don't want to play the exact same area. I'd like to, but I'm still scared to play a colonial and have to deal with the entire board. I detest having to deal with the north and all this geography up here. I'm scared totally to play a pure, not a pure, but a main naval force like Japan. That seems really rough. When I started having to get into INO, I'm like, whew, it's a lot tougher. So yeah, jump in, play. If it's your very first game, play a small regional. It'll either be over quick or you could go to a victory. Even though you bumbled your way through it like I did. But yeah, just keep talking to people, even if someone stabs you, even if you're stabbing someone. I think halfway through this, I reached out to Ming and Toku, and like we were still conversing. We were still having some dialogue, even though we clearly were at odds with each other. I think that's a mark of a really good player. Is even when you're at odds or fighting, you're still trying to have a conversation, trying to understand what the other person wants and why are you fighting. So yeah, very fun game, and thanks for listening.